Hello, my fellow Westorians. Welcome back. It's Monday. It's Halloween as we're recording. I don't know if we've ever streamed on Halloween before, which is kind of a double whammy of a realization. Either my memory is really shot, or we've been doing this so long that I couldn't possibly remember. One of the let's go with that one. That one's friendlier to me, so we'll go with that one. Yeah, we've just been doing so much that
usually you scream on Halloween, not stream.
That's true. there was a series of movies though, right? Stream 2, Stream 3 with the mask and the that's what they were called. Yeah, it had Drew Barrymore in that first movie. Yeah,
Streaming Wars comes out.
So, no spoilers as usual for Sean-isodes, as we surely should have been calling them all along. But yeah, we're going to review Season 1 without spoilers. And then next week, we're going to review Season 1 with spoilers, which means we'll be looking ahead, because if we weren't looking ahead, I don't know how we would spoil anything at all. So, because we otherwise would only be reviewing what we've already seen. And that'll be with our guests, Learned Hands, our good friends over there. This week, we have some friends who I just saw in person less than 48 hours ago. Our good friends, Game of Owns. It looks like y'all are in Washington. We hung out in New York City, but you all are on the move as well. We're all very mobile these last few hours or a few days, huh?
Yeah, we have cars. Yeah.
Well, hey, great to have you guys here. Welcome.
Thanks for having us. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
I can't believe we hung out 48 hours ago. That kind of broke my brain a little bit.
That's
how long ago it was.
Shay, you're coming back up to New York next week, right?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm coming here. Technically I'm not going to New York. I'm going to New Jersey, D.C., and Baltimore. But I'm going to a different George R. Martin event with Kevin Smith.
Yeah, so we saw George R. Martin and Neil Gaiman in New York City, and that was really fun. Shout out to some other folks we saw, Julie A., Gregor the Toasty, Lord of the Breadfort, Senia, and lots of fellow podcasters and friends like Yoke Boy from Radio Westeros, both of Girls Gone Canon, Emmett Booth of Not a Cast, Stephen Atwell of Race for the Iron Throne, Haley Bowery of the Manimals. Did I forget anybody? There's a lot of people who came up and said, hey, whose names I don't recall. What's that?
His dog.
Your dog.
He's probably still on your clothes.
Strike.
Shout him out.
Yeah, shout out to Strike. What a good doggo. So if you came up and said hello to us at the event, appreciate that. I can't possibly remember all the names, but it was a good time. Neil and George have good chemistry. They know each other. They're kind of a rare pair in that they're successful writers, very successful writers who've had shows adapted to TV and puts them in sort of obscure company. Not a lot of people can say they've done that. So that's pretty cool. Now, a lot of us are going to Game of Thrones Con, the GOT Con by Creation Entertainment in LA in December. So we hope to see some of you all there as well. And so things are happening. There's some conventions. We got to continue to be safe and avoid COVID, but we also, we've made a commitment on History of Westeros to go to as many events as we can, to cover them, and to stay close to the center of the action. And, it's paid off, I think. It's gone well.
I guess it's worth saying that while we're in LA in December for the GotCon, even if you don't plan on going to the convention, I think we should plan on something outside of the convention, some sort of hangout. So, if you're in the LA, San Diego area, hit us up.
Yeah. With that.
And I'll be there for that one. I just want to.
Yeah. And are you two determining maybe if you can go to that one? Is that maybe a possibility for Game of Owns to make that one?
We were talking, we were not planning on going, and then you were talking about it while we were together in New York. And we're like, maybe we should go. So, yeah.
And now I have tipped the scale.
Exactly. Sean's like, I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Shay always uses you as a bargaining chip. She's like, Sean is going.
Like,
you know that you do that too. Throw it in on the show while we're live.
Yeah, I'm like, Sean watches it. Sean likes it. I might mean nothing to you, but I know you value Sean.
Yeah.
So y'all's last episode was recorded on Friday with myself and Yoke Boy as guests. So check that out. It's a wrap of the season as well. Different approach than what we'll be doing today. So you'll want to catch that also if you haven't already caught it. Well,
We all have our own microphones today. That's one of the main.
so
You guys were
when
great on that episode.
when y'all are finished with this one, go check that one out. Keep the fun going. Keep the wrap up energy flowing for a couple more hours. You all can ask questions. You have the benefit of 5 different possible answers. There's 5 of us here today. And it has me thinking. One question I want y'all to be thinking about out there, especially in light of the finale, but also other events that have happened with dragons, both in show and books. What are some other times throughout history that a human was credited or blamed for an action that may have been a dragon taking control, or maybe the dragon was actually the driving force there? Aemond gives us an example of something that maybe happened in other cases that history would have lost that nuance because, well, there weren't witnesses, there weren't TV cameras pointed at their face to see that nuanced facial reaction, things like that. So I'd love to hear y'all weigh in on that, as well as any other questions you have for the round table here. We've got a bunch of questions prepared. It should be a lot of fun. Remember, though, no spoilers. General rule, if it happened prior to 129 AC in Fire and Blood, it's not a spoiler. We're lucky we can carve a line just like that or draw a line just like that.
As a product of doing it this long, man, we have to have centuries. We have an AC.
Yeah, we have that, and the adaptation is smooth enough that we can kind of just we don't have to draw a crooked line. We're like, all right there, you can be pretty sure. So we'll start by talking about our favorites, and then we'll get a little deeper. The analysis will get a little thicker as we go on. We'll start off talking about what we like, and then get into the tougher questions. But I just want to express that it's kind of amazing that it's been less than 4 years since Fire and Blood was released. November 20th, 2018 is when it came out. So very close to 4 years. We're only 20 days short of that. But not only has it already been adapted, but its season 1's already the book. Well, not the whole thing. Obviously not the entirety of 900 pages of Fire and Blood were adapted. But still, that's pretty wild when you think about it. Like, that's fast, right? We had COVID during that, too. I mean, that didn't exactly speed things up. So let me just leave you with that to start off with. Ooh, wow. Any reactions to that? Do y'all any of y'all have a take in response to having that math put forward?
No, not to be too contrary, Aziz, but COVID might have accelerated it. There might be, almost certainly, there's a greater demand for media content now than there was before.
You might be right. It might be harder to make, but there might be more demand for it. That's true. My little push and a little pull both ways. Huh. That's a good point. Good point. So we have been all season long taking our polls for the actors and who we thought was the best or who we just thought stood out that episode, someone we wanted to highlight. And the Facebook polls, you were allowed to vote more than once. So I compiled them all. First of all, last week's, because y'all didn't get to see them because we put the poll up after the review, so y'all haven't heard the results yet. It was Emma Darcy got 50%. They took it down. That's the third highest score anyone's gotten, behind Millie Alcock, same character, 53% for week 2. And of course, Patty Considine, week 8, got 67%, which was easily the most. Matt Smith got second place with 17%. Eve Best and Ewan Mitchell were tied for third place with 8%. So looking back on that, check this out, y'all. Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook were only in 4 episodes each, right? Because episode 9 and 10, they were each only in one of them. Emma Darcy won twice and got third place once. Olivia Cook won twice and got third place once in 4 episodes. So they won all 4 of the episodes they were in and got third. And 2 of the others, they really crushed it. That's amazing. Patty Considine in his 8 episodes got first, third, and third. So he really did well, too. And, of course, he got that highest score possible. Matt Smith never won, but he got second 4 times and third once, which is pretty impressive.
Second son energy.
Hey, I didn't realize that. Great point. Wow. Man, that's a good call. I really should have noticed that. Emily Carey was in 5 episodes. She got a first and a second. Millie Alcock was in 5 episodes. She got 2 firsts, a second, and a third. So that's also very impressive. Great job by the cast.
When did Emily Carey get a first?
She got a first for episode 5 for the green, when she comes in, like with her, when she comes in and becomes the boss and saves Kristen.
wedding.
And
For the wedding.
the wedding that wasn't supposed to be a wedding. Yes, exactly. That's when she got first. Yeah, Millie Alcock won weeks 2 and 4. Now, the only time a one-off actor got first place was Sion Brooke in week 1 for her performance as Emma Aaron. No one's surprised to hear that one, I think. Leo Ashton's 26% was the second highest for someone who was only in a couple episodes. He was technically in 2 episodes. Nana Blondell was only in 1 episode. She got second place with a 13%. That was really strong. Tom Glencarney got that 1/3 place for 10%. He's only been in 2 episodes. And Fabian Frankel has been in a lot of episodes. He got a 15% in episode 5. Also, the one where he gets angry and they have their breakup and all. So that was pretty strong. Eve Best and Ewan Mitchell, also last shout out is to them. They both placed twice. They're the only ones to place twice that weren't in the main top 6 cast members there. The top 6 being 4 characters.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right. You got 2 Emma, or what? 2 Rhaenyras, 2 Alicents, and then Viserys and Daemon. Cool. All right. Well, now let's get into asking y'all's favorites. That was a lot of talk from me. Let's hear from our guests and from Sean and Ashay a bit. Round table time. Favorite/chosen. That basically means, if you pick, you can pick a favorite, but if you don't want to repeat something someone else said, you can pick someone else. So we're going to go with main cast performer, and we're going to usually start with Sean because he's the unsullied one, but maybe we'll mix it up a little bit throughout the episode. Sean, we'll start with you. Who is your favorite performer of the season from the main cast, or just someone you want to highlight?
I'm going to say Millie Alcock. I think that she... I don't think anyone was head and shoulders above anyone else. I think everyone gave really good performances. And I think that sometimes there's more for certain characters to give, like just being more central, having more emotional moments. But whatever the reasons are, I think she did it. And also maybe she gets credit, let's just say some objective, performing arts instructor could tell us more definitively Matt Smith actually did better. I could accept that. Except he's an experienced adult performer. She's this young girl with her first big show, and she's on par with him at least. And so I want to give her credit for that. This past week, I actually rewatched the first couple episodes and was just reminded how well she was. She's been out of it for half the season, but going back and watching, yep, she was definitely the best one in that first episode.
Right on.
And the second episode. So yeah.
Cool. Zach, what about you?
I honestly want to say the same thing. I think that Matt Smith did a really hard job. I think that he had heavy lifting being Daemon Targaryen. And he was Daemon Targaryen the whole time, not for half of the season and then for the second half of the season. But I think that Millie Alcock also really, and Emily Carey too, and I mean, Patty was a constant throughout the whole thing, so I'm going to leave him out of that talk. I would just say that he's number 1, but then I would have 3 tied number 1.
It just goes to show how hard it is to pick. Yeah.
He really understood going into the series. It felt like that he knew the task of bringing back GOT, and also like he was working up to it his whole life. Like his time on the set and with all the BTS stuff that we've seen, and again, the sense of mind that he had in his character clearly throughout the entire course of all the episodes that he was in was made to bring back the series in the way that he did. And so it just matched in a way that I don't think that we've had a character come into Game of Thrones before, other than someone like Pedro came in really knowing what he needed to be to play Oberyn Martell or the Red Viper. And that was the vibe I got from Patty. But I think that Millie was what we all focused on mainly when we were seeing if we liked Hot D or not, and what she brought to the role, whether it's good being new or not, whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but I think it really made it land. It was sort of the same kind of magic that we got from the rest of the cast from the last show or other good shows that we like. She had that too.
Right on.
Which made people want to keep watching. But at the same time, Matt Smith, like I said, he had to be Daemon Targaryen the whole time. He had to.
Oh, they glitched.
He was dodging more arrows.
I think we should cut him off. You're skipping, Zach, so we could not hear you anymore. Yes.
Is our audio messed
Yeah,
up?
you're good now.
Can you hear us
Yeah,
now?
Yeah, you're good now.
You're back.
Let's move on to him.
Anyway, he had.
You went
Anyway, yeah, go on.
when you said Siri, it triggered Siri on
Oh.
the computer. So I think that's what happened.
That's hilarious.
And it cut us
You're
off.
Right, I
Matt
think
Smith
that
is
what
good.
That was absolutely.
That's hilarious.
I'm going Millie though.
Cool.
What about you, Hannah? Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in. Just to kind of reiterate something that you were saying that people may or may not have heard, I would give my pick to Patty Viserys,
Nice.
just for the life that he brought to Viserys' character. And we heard so much ahead of House of Dragon coming out from George about how he brought Viserys to life, and so there was a lot of excitement surrounding what his character was going to be. And I feel like he just absolutely delivered. Every episode, he cracked me up. I thought he was hilarious, and I thought he was kingly and interesting, and made this kind of throwaway character almost feel like the most exciting and important and fun thing to watch. Not that he's a throwaway character, but like he wasn't like the main guy when we were reading Fire and Blood necessarily. So I felt like he was a standout for me.
Right on. Shay, what about you?
Well, there's certainly a world in which I said Millie or I said Patty, but in the interest of switching it up, and because I do love them all, I will say Emily Carey out of the Alicents, and it's close between the two, but similarly to Millie, I have to give respect to the younger, less experienced actor, to the one that had to really set the stage, and the one that really made me fall in love with Alicent as a character. And like, I don't love adult Alicent. She's a lot more problematic, and so I don't have the same passion for her. But young Alicent, I felt such empathy for, and I just felt so much for her. So I'll say Emily.
Right on. I definitely would have said Emily if you hadn't. I was going to pick one of the actresses who played Alicent because I think just like you, the point you made, Matt, or rather Zach, was really good, that Matt Smith had a hard job to do because he's filling a big role, a role that people have expectations for. I thought that was good that you used Pedro as an example because
And
that's
a weird role.
Yeah, because the Red Viper had expectations too, whereas the expectations for Alicent was people were going to hate her. Right, that's hard for a different reason. The expectation for Patty was he's bringing to life a role that didn't have much life. So those are all different challenges for the actors involved here. And with Emily Carey, I would have said similar to what you just said, Ashaya, that she brought life, like something you like. She brought likability to a role that was not likable from the books. And then Olivia just performed it so well. Once she became an adult, it was like, wow, this is really making it good. It reminded me of Cersei because she's got moments of villainy. Now, Alicent is way less villainous than Cersei, at least to this point. I'm saying that as a smokescreen, not that I expect her to be more villainous than Cersei in the long run. I'm just saying we'll see what happens. But it's hard to be a compelling villain because a lot of villains are one note or two note, and these are very fleshed out women in similar positions of being dowager queen, of having their children against other people's children, of having a king that's kind of not around, things like that. So she was also treading familiar ground. Like, she also doesn't want to be too much like Cersei. She has to be new, has to be a compelling villain, have to be likable while being dislikable. It's really hard. So I just was really impressed by that. All right, what about minor performers? Someone who wasn't one of the main cast. Now, it's up to you what minor means. And folks, if you're weighing in the comments with your own versions, feel free to make up your own definition of minor. It's not worth drawing a line in the sand exactly what minor and major means in this context. So, Sean, back to you. Who was your favorite minor performer?
I would probably say I feel bad I don't remember the actor's name now, but the younger Aegon, was that Tennant? Was that
Ty Tennant?
Yeah. Oh, good pick.
Ty Tennant? Yeah, I think. By the way, another category we should have here is best butt.
Dear God. Dear God.
I think
Was that a stunt
Tell us
butt?
who that is, Sean.
I have some ideas.
I mean,
How many
We-
butts did we
Unrelated
see?
to me picking Titanic, just I forgot to mention it earlier. It wasn't in a document,
Okay.
Yeah, I think that once again, I think that just generally the casting director gets credit
Yeah.
for this, and a lot of times acting, there are a lot of other unsung heroes in a production of a show, editors and directors, cinematographies. I guess directors are usually not unsung, but anyway, I just want to give a lot of credit all around, and I think it makes a lot of sense to focus on the performers. But it's hard when there's so many good ones. There, I don't think that there was like one or even two or three characters that were like nailing it, and everyone else is okay. I think they were all nailing it, so we're struggling to figure out, who was the highest of all the nines.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I dip into things like wanting to give more credit to the people who have less experience or something.
Yeah,
like
I feel
that.
like that's totally valid. Yeah, like just like you're allowed to choose what minor means, you're allowed to choose whatever criteria for things like this. Yeah, we're not trying to be like some award show where they're very strict and leave things out. Now we're just touting our opinions and calling out our favorites here. Zach, what about you?
Man, I'm gonna say either Hotto or Hotto.
Oh,
So
Okay.
there's a butt you wish you had
New
seen.
canon.
You're a Reese.
Yeah, I'm
Ifans.
thinking about deep fake options for that. Hotto Hightower,
Otto Eye.
Really?
That's
or I'm gonna say a tie between Otto and Caraxes.
That's
Nice.
so fun.
good. I like it.
I just thought they brought the same amount of polish, but also it's like they had the polish and then the darker, like cobalt blue, like color with it. It was like, oh, this show's gonna be good. These guys are rich and deep, and Caraxes was the same way. I think as Otto, just effective and exactly what they needed to be.
that scene they had together
With a
was,
new
was
spin
pretty
on it.
effective.
Yeah, oh yeah, they have been in a few
in
seasons
at
together,
least
right?
one.
Or was it just
Yeah,
one?
See episode
Yeah.
2, right? Yeah, on the walkway
rules.
there, on the causeway.
Yeah, that rules. Okay, good. Good.
They need
I
their
don't
own.
want to talk about my Otto Caraxes fic. We're gonna leave that. Out of
Yeah,
this
they need a
episode. We have a whole
spin-off.
off season to get into it.
Hannah, what's your call?
Man, I really wanted to say the guy who played Otto, but Zach stole my answer.
Reese
So
Ifans.
yeah,
Of course.
Reese. Yeah, I have it literally open up on my phone. You're probably creeping on what I got.
Oh yeah, you do.
There's like a
Let's
picture
open it
of
back
him.
And it's like, call me first next time.
Right. I want to give mine to, I don't remember his name. I need to look up, but the guy who plays Laris,
Oh, Matthew Needham.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matthew Needham.
Matthew Needham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause we need
I
him.
thought that he brought, yeah,
We all do.
he brought such the perfect vibe to the character without even saying anything. Like just seeing him on your screen, you're like, okay, I know what this guy's going to be all about. So minor character, I'd have to give it to him.
Nice.
That's good.
That is a
Like
good
even
call.
from the tent is what you're saying.
Mhm,
You're like,
yeah.
wait a second.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I liked his, he was perfect for the role.
Cool. Ashea, who do you pick?
This is so hard to say. And we the other category. I'll say we have some categories coming up about best deaths and worst deaths. So maybe I'll get to shout out some people later.
Yeah.
But like I want to say Lena, but I just don't think that she quite got enough. I want to say Harwin, but I also don't think he got enough. So I'm gonna say little Leo Ashton is young Aemond and big Aemond is Ewan Mitchell. I'm gonna cheat and
Those are
say them
probably the
both.
right answers.
But like.
Yeah.
I said it before, but Leo Ashton laid so much groundwork for making us feel for Aemond and feel his emotions, and it just worked so well for me. The betrayal that he feel like you can see on his face during the scene with the dagger with the knife when Allison is upset and Aemond is kind of like no one's standing up for him. I don't know. I really liked Leo Ashton, and I really appreciated that he was like really involved in the fandom on social media. Like out of
Yeah.
the cast members, like he was
Mhm.
really engaging with people
He was.
and like loving it. I just want to shout out this great tweet that he had where he said that his mother had a crush on Big Aemond and that she was channeling the Targaryens because she had a crush on his older self, and it was so funny to me.
Oh, that is weird.
The rules.
Like, how do you process that as someone his age? You're like, my mom likes
The older
My
me.
character, but not me.
Not my problem.
Yeah.
Process it.
So I'll shout out Eve Best. Arguably, she's not minor enough, but hey, I said we get to make our own criteria. I would have probably said you and Mitchell. I was thinking about Leo Ashton too. So
I'm stealing all your answers.
that's
Aziz.
fine. I don't mind. I don't mind like being the last one. I can pick the one who doesn't get named. I'll like be the safety here. She was so good. She was consistently strong. Her facial expressions. If this had been like one of those like a show like The Office or Parks and Rec, they would have been looking at her face. The camera would have been looking at her reaction. She would have been the one like doing the like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? Like, look at these idiots. Like she would have been the Jim looking at the camera. Yeah. So I'll go with her. She is really strong and
No, she's
consistently
Targaryen,
so.
not strong.
She is Targaryen, not strong. You're right. She's kind of against the Strongs, really. Yeah. Okay, let's go with one more character question here, which is, what character your opinion changed on the most? For Sean, this will have been during the season. For the rest of us, we will have had more preconceived notions because of Fire and Blood. So there's a little bit of a slightly different angle to that. But again, we'll start with you, Sean. What was a character who you had an opinion on, and over time it flipped, whether it turned sour or just expanded or went good from bad, whatever you think?
Well, I think the one whose my opinion changed on the most, it wasn't really over time. It was one episode. Ironic go after what Hannah just said about Laris, because when he first came on, it might not have been his very first appearance, but it's the first time he's featured. He was in the garden there with Rhaenyra. No, with Alicent. Yeah. And there was that little back and forth. He was kind of like maybe a combination of kind of trying to picking her brain and also planting some seeds. And Ashaya, kind of asked me what I thought of him. Is like, I think he's a good guy. I think he's trying to like help Alicent out. I think, and she's like, all right, so we're going on record. Sean is behind Larsa. And by the next episode, he like killed his own father and brother. I'm like, oh geez, I had that guy wrong for sure. So I think to at least the letter, if not the spirit of this question, that's got to be the character that I most shifted my opinions on. I thought he was going to be maybe like a Littlefingerish character, but with maybe better intentions. And it seemed he's more like a Littlefinger character with worse intentions.
It seems like you thought he was maybe a little closer to Varys than Littlefinger, and he's closer to Littlefinger than Varys.
Yeah. That sounds about right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, Zach, what about you? Who's your call here? Who did you change opinion on the most?
Alicent.
Yeah? Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
I figured one of us at least would say
Alicent.
Alicent. What stood out to you most?
I think that, Sean, you're so right about Laris, though. So right. But for me, it was different. It was like I thought he was a big bad, and then he ended up just wanting to whack it to feet. So you're not that scary. But I think that Alicent just continues to. I still don't have any resolution. I think it's just the smartness of the folks writing the show and the dumbness of me when I was reading Fire and Blood to not know that there was that many layers to Alicent. And so the show for me is still revealing the potential real heart of her, because I was confused from episode 1, from the tree to the carriage, or from the carriage to the tree. And I'm still confused now at the very end of it, even post Rhaenyra or Rhaenys conversation. But I'm not confused about how she wanted to protect her kids, but I'm just still looking for the heart of her character. It's not clear yet.
Okay, right on. Hannah, what about you?
I'm going to give mine to Kristen Cole,
Nice.
who became a hated figure on our podcast. But I think from both the beginning of the season and also just from reading Fire and Blood, I had this idea of who this guy was going to be, and we knew he was going to switch sides. But I think I was surprised by how much it like pissed me off, like how much it upset me. And one of the things that I know we were really looking forward to was kind of getting that depth and those relationships and that heartbreak. And I think that Kristen Cole's character completely delivered. I mean, he went from being this guy that was gonna switch sides, or that maybe potentially had feelings for both these girls, and how was it gonna work out, to being this person that I really hated seeing on screen. So, Kristen Cole.
I have thoughts.
Great, good.
By the way, I'll appreciate, Sean, that in the chat we got when you said Millie Alcock is your favorite, Dom replied.
There's a contingency of disappointed people.
No, Dom said, that's very Kristen Cole of you to pick Millie Rhaenyra and not Emma Rhaenyra. And I was like, that's
right on.
But no, for me, like, I do feel like it is Alicent. Like, ultimately, for me, I do agree with, like, how could it be anyone but Alicent, truly? Like, that was such a huge switch in how I perceived her character. But for the sake of variety, I'll say the duo of Daemon and Aemond, who are two, like, I put them together because they're two, like, rogue princes. They're these two, kind of terrible people in Fire and Blood is my perception of them. Kind of terrible and flat, I guess. And then I saw both of them on screen and I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I get why people liked these characters or why they were intrigued or, all that. So both of them were surprising to me that I cared for them.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, I think that's probably who I would pick in a vacuum as well.
Alicent?
Yeah. But also because I'd like to not repeat, I'll say Viserys. I mean, it's an easy answer, but it's true. I mean, it's going from having very little opinion and most of it being kind of negative to having still a lot of criticisms of the character, just having a lot more to dig into in general. And so my opinion didn't necessarily change from good to bad or bad to good. It just changed from very little to quite a lot, right? It went from the quantity of opinion changed quite a lot on him, and that was definitely a product of how well he was brought to life. By the way, shout out to Kate Rhodes James. That's the casting director for House of the Dragon. So keep in mind her when we're praising all these fantastic actors. Now let's switch gears just a little bit. Let's go on the critical side here. Something that you dislike. Doesn't have to be a character, but it can be a character. It can be a plot. It can be a writing decision. It can be anything something you want to highlight that you didn't like. Sean, what is your pick?
Two things come to mind, and one I think is like a writer issue, and one is a in-world disappointment with a character issue. I guess there's a lot of things maybe to be disappointed by the characters for, but Daemon's run was frustrating to me. I think it was like an out of place. It was like a superhero movie moment. Like Daemon can be a badass, but he's not Superman. You know what I mean? He shouldn't. There were too many people with arrows. There was like maybe on some level, if they had showed like a training sequence where they plotted out the route he was going to run, there was some distractionary force. There's ways I can come up with in my mind where they might have made that more believable. Just had less guys shooting arrows, but I don't know. It was the one. The maybe the worst moment in the show for me when I was like, what's happening here? But it's pretty much the only one.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the silver lining is it. One, I expect a lot of people might pick that as their favorite moment. Like a lot of people want cool action and badass superheroes. I want more drama and more realism. So maybe I'm not with everyone as far as that opinion goes. But then the other thing that my gripe was that Rhaenys, who there are many angles, many things that might make me pick her out as a favorite character or a hero of the story, except that when she busts up through the floor, not only is that kind of a writing logistical issue I have a little problem with, but also made me like it keeps her from being able to root for her too much because she just killed a bunch of innocent people.
Yeah, so that's kind of both ways. It's like a writing choice and like it dims the character for you. Yeah, I hear that. Okay, Zach, what's your call here? He's like, I can't say anything negative.
He's like, I'm HBO shill. I'm not
I can't
allowed.
be critical.
I'm I can't say a negative
We're contractually
word.
I
obligated.
dislike that there weren't 12 episodes.
But yeah, if you know first, you can go first, Hannah, I suppose, too. Give Zach a moment.
She's gonna say anything I'm gonna say. I bet.
Go for it. See
Zach's like,
if
I
do.
didn't get to steal anything from Hannah, so I'd have nothing.
Right. I have no ideas up on Google
her
right now.
screen is too dim right now. I can't read it. So I think I don't like any quick shot to thing you're supposed to look at.
Hmm?
So all the daggers,
Oh.
quick looks at that was really.
Okay.
It was just a window into a painful past. You guys all know what past I'm talking about. The past where
the future.
that existed before, and yeah, the future, which was our past.
So you didn't like the dagger stuff?
I don't know.
In general?
No, I mean you can have it in there, but maybe handle it with the same amount of subtlety that you did walking to a tree.
Mm.
You know, like just I don't know, just maybe do it a little bit less obvious. That's the only thing I didn't like, and I think it's a pretty small gripe, and I don't think that it really matches the same energy as the rest of the subtle finish that they have on the rest of the show. So I think it was probably something that came from upstairs, if I'm right, but I might be wrong. But it just doesn't really fit the vibe of everything else. Every time they go, "What you're seeing here, Harry, are memories," and it's like I saw that thing, but
You know,
I yeah, say it, Sean. Go say your shit. Go.
you're reminding me of the opening. You remember there was, they had the very, very intro. They had the narration of the Great Council, but even before that, there was just like writing on a screen.
Yeah,
and it was like what you're seeing here takes place 100 years before Dany Targaryen, and it all bleeds away except for 100 years before Dany. I really want to. So on one hand, I kind of see what you're saying that. We can figure this out, right? You don't have to like zoom in on the dagger.
Yeah.
But I think they're walking a thin line because we're deep in this fandom. We're doing podcasts for it, and many other people are listening to them.
Yeah.
But you got to know there's probably like millions of people watching this that don't know Fire and Blood or that it's 100 years before. They need some clarification, and it's probably a tricky balance, even if it is coming from upstairs.
Dude, listen,
I
man,
see your complaint, but
if it was the people who made the show or people upstairs
or God himself,
whoever it came from, they know. And your point sounds good. And if that is the point that's better than being smooth, then you know better than me. Fine. I'm just saying I noticed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and to me, it just seems like everything else was so smooth. I don't know if we necessarily need that.
Yeah.
But
you didn't like that poster where the dragon's eye was the shape of the dagger?
It was like the clip art dagger. It was like the flat.
I didn't notice that until like the 7th episode. So maybe.
Me too. Well, honestly, me.
Well, Hannah, what's your pick?
So I don't really have a real complaint.
Okay.
I wanted to say one other thing to that point was it is sort of uneven because I didn't get on the first watch of the episode that Emma and Aegon, Helena and Aegon were married with kids. I didn't pick up on it, right?
Okay.
That was like subtle enough, like you're saying,
Okay.
that I needed a second watch to piece that together. And so it is weird that something I'm going to say is significant like that, they didn't like make sure we understood. Whereas other things they do, it's like when they do and don't do it isn't exactly even.
I'm so glad
you to do that, but.
I'm so glad you brought that up because we had a friend of ours that specifically said to us in a group text, I liked how they didn't say who his wife was. Which I guess it made it feel like more of an organic scene there at the wedding, when they're sitting beside each other and they're sort of referencing each other. But like, that's funny that we have had two friends now point out the same thing, but from different sides. So I think it just illustrates the whole goal of Fire and Blood from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Just trying to do it right in the middle that we can all interpret in a different way.
Hannah?
So maybe the knife is part of that.
I'm gonna go a little bit broader because, to be honest, was like a House of the Dragon fangirl. So there's not a lot that I would say narratively that about doing the wrong way that we haven't already brought up. But something that has been like bugging me, I guess, from a very broad perspective, is that we have to wait so long for the next season.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a shame that we have to I know that a lot of networks are doing that these days and taking breaks between big shows and things like that. But we've had such a great momentum with season 1, and they had to have known that we were going to get renewed for season 2. I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer that was going to happen. They announced it like halfway through the week after episode 1, and so I'm bummed that we'll lose some of the momentum and that we'll have to wait so long until we get season 2.
Fair call. What about you, Shay?
Well, I didn't love the rainy scene in general, but I kind of like. I didn't love it for some of the reasons Sean said, but I kind of have accepted it as like, okay, it adds to my appreciation of the Rhaenys character, as in like, if I choose to believe that is a character trait that Rhaenys did not care about those commoners, well, then that added to her character. So like, I kind of have justified it in my head. So I'm gonna say something kind of broad as well, which was. The thing Aziz joked about, which was that I wish they had 12 episodes, but it is really that. I do honestly feel like there was just a little period around the time jump where things were a little rushed. I do think that characters like Laena and Harwin specifically, and the younger children, would have benefited from just a little bit of breathing room. They really clearly wanted to hit the big Storm's End, Aemond, Lucerys thing at the end of the season. That was like something they had to get to, so they were kind of hemmed in. But I think that I don't know. I think that's honestly just my biggest complaint, is I just think they needed a little bit more breathing room for between episodes 5 and 7. Like those ones should have just been longer even, and it would have made a difference. I don't know. That's mine.
You know, if they broke the format a little and had 12 episodes, they might have also felt less need to have this big penultimate moment, and they might not have done that thing with Rhaenys.
Yeah, that's true too.
Maybe,
You're right.
maybe.
It might have just been, and so mine's a bit of a cop-out. I know some people will be like, that's not really a complaint. You just want more. But no, it is that I and it has its own ramifications. Like I also do feel like Laena got short shrift, and so did Baela and Rhaena. And like, that isn't how they meant it to come off, but like they made the Velaryons black, and so now we have these black women who are just like really don't ever get any focus in the story. And I know it's coming though, so I can't really I can't be too harsh with it, because Baela and Rhaena will get their time to shine. But I really feel like there was room for that in this season, I guess.
I would have said Rhaenys busting through the floor as well. I do really, even though I really like
You guys didn't
a
like
lot
that.
of other
No, we
aspects.
didn't.
Well, what I said was I just didn't like the logistics of it, which is, again, it's hard to find something to criticize. I'm with you guys that it's hard to pick something here. I considered naming the feet thing, because after we talked about it, it didn't seem to register very well. For like, it's not very believable. It doesn't reflect the way people with disabilities have fetishes and things like that. It just doesn't. It wasn't very well planned out. But I do really love the symbolism of what Rhaenys did, and I do love the setup for things I won't talk about because it's spoilery. So I still really like that. I feel like they maybe could have found a different way to pull those things off. But yeah, again, it's a good sign that we don't have a wide variety of complaints, and some of the complaints are there wasn't enough. So yeah,
I know.
I was like trying to see if we could get a little controversial here. Nah, you guys were just like, nah, we just liked it too much. But that's fine. That's valid. All right, let's get back to some, I guess, low-hanging fruit here. Favorite dragon. First, a few dragon facts.
I think
Correct.
I know Zach's favorite dragon based on his answer earlier.
That's not my favorite dragon.
Oh, it isn't. It's just your favorite performance is the
Oh, his favorite performance by a dragon.
One of my favorite minor
I
performances.
have a favorite dragon, but my favorite actor
Yes.
dragon is different. Yes.
It is different, and I'm after Sean. So you're gonna have to wait for that, Shea.
So Caraxes appeared in the most episodes of the Dragons. It's 7. So Caraxes gets the quantity award as well as the longest neck award. Dreamfire and Vermax were in 2 episodes each. Sea Smoke was in 3. Vagar was in 3, which seems like Vagar was in more, but Vagar was just always like such a big deal, literally, when she was on screen. Cyrax was in 4. Melis was in 4. Sunfire, Vermithor, and Arax were in 1. Silverwing, Moondancer, Tyraxes, and the Wild Dragons were mentioned only. And wouldn't you know, we did get a mention of Tessarion indirectly. Daemon said in the final episode, the Greens have 4 dragons. Vagar, Sunfire, Dreamfire, and question mark, it's got to be Tessarion. Well, who else could it be? So there we go. So they kind of did.
Who's Tessarion, should I know?
Tessarion is
Spoiler
the
to coming?
not really, no, it's the brother that hasn't been seen yet.
Oh, Daron?
Yes, Daron, the
He's
4th
the-
child of.
Yeah, he has his own
Jon
dragon.
Snow's
Okay.
mother.
Yeah, so he has a young dragon too. It's like, you know, young like him. It's not some huge dragon. So by the way, we talked about the name Vermithrax pejorative from the movie Dragon Slayer last time around, which is one of George's favorites, and we joked about how Vermithrax is probably the origin of the name Vermithor and the name Vermax, because both of those are basically contained in Vermithrax. what I had forgotten was that when Viserys is having that bathtub scene with Aroa in episode like 5 of the first show, she's like asking him all those questions about dragons, and the showrunners decided it would be funny just to insert a bunch of jokes instead of real dragons from the history of the show. But they stuck in Vermithrax, that he says like all these names that aren't from anywhere else. They're just like inside jokes, and then he says Vermithrax. So, yeah. To me, the in-world solution for that scene is Viserys just doesn't know, so he was just trying to make enough names to sound so he wouldn't sound like an idiot. He's like, I don't know, Vermithrax, Sovius, Arcane. Yeah, so he's just throwing out names that sound cool because he doesn't know. Anyway, so Sean, who's your favorite dragon?
I'll go for the low-hanging fruit, Caraxes.
Cool.
I think he was, maybe just because he's featured the most, but I think they did a good job of using him to present the menacing nature of the dragons. You know?
Yeah. Isn't it neat how Caraxes always... There was no moment of Caraxes not obeying Daemon either, where like there was for some of the other dragons. Maybe that's yet to come, but yeah. As an extension of him, it's neat, too.
Yeah. By the way, I hopefully it's okay to just spark some discussion. I don't want to cut everyone off on their answers, but I was thinking about the idea that I wonder how much the dragons behaving or misbehaving is like their personality or the writer's personality or some combination.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why Viserys didn't like or want to ride Balerion, because he knew we couldn't really control him. Like, I wonder if that added to his fear, or the idea that, we can control dragons is an illusion. Maybe he's like, look, maybe you can control your dragon, but I can't control mine. And if I can't, I'm not sure that everyone can. I was thinking about that a lot lately.
Yeah. Yeah, and Caraxes has that neat whining siren sound too. That's very distinct. I like that. Okay, so Zach, who you picking?
Caraxes has a what is it?
Like a
deviated septum.
Oh, deviated
Yeah.
septum. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's what that
It
is.
came with the long neck. It's just part of that whole elongated nasal passages or something. Yeah.
I love Caraxes, as Ashea and Sean both will attest to. I gotta say Melee's though.
Oh,
Ooh.
with her crown.
Melee's was yes, the crown and the being at the perfect age for the show to really show us. I mean, Vermithor I think really brought it at the end. We're all Vagar, and then Vermithor's like, "Hey, I'm still here.
I'm still here."
And it's like, okay, it's a little bit more of a promise. It's like the Greens might not have everything, and Vagar's may not be that like tapped in or smart. Maybe it's just more primal. So we'll see. There's like promises, but I think Melee's showed the most. Caraxes was really cerebral for sure, but Melee's was just for me personified what Rhaenys is as a character that we didn't really get.
Nice.
The true power of a different tier of Targaryens that come from blooded people that can fucking fight.
Beast
And
beneath the
roar
boards.
was next level.
Yeah. What other dragon
Exactly.
busted through
Yeah.
a floor too? Like they have that. She has that crown on her head, and she used it to smash through the. Didn't even dent it. Hannah, who's your dragon pick?
I'm gonna go a little cliche, although I guess all the dragons are cliche. But I'm gonna pick Vagar
Cool.
for my dragon pick.
Meemaw.
I felt like they did such a good job in House of the Dragon of making these dragons big and huge, and some instances scary, and with their different personalities. And I was worried, like based off of Game of Thrones, we'd already seen a dragon, so how are we going to see something bigger and cooler and grander than Drogon? But LOL, we were just watching some Game of Thrones scenes
yeah.
over the weekend.
You saw it, Aziz. Remember how small Drogon was?
Yeah.
Drogon looks like a little kid, like a little
Daenerys was
baby
huge
dragon.
on Drogon.
We watched the
Yeah, so I
Daznax pit
thought-
scene. Yeah, I was like, boy, that's a small
Yeah.
dragon.
So Vagar being Vagar, I loved the scale that we got from him
Nice.
and all the other dragons.
Scale. I see what you did there.
Yeah, see?
What?
Ashea, who's your choice?
My real favorite probably is Caraxes' long boy because of the
Long
long
boy.
thing, but I want to give a special
Long boy.
shout out to Cyrax because in this shot,
Yeah.
I want to point out that Cyrax has the cutest smile along with Arax as well, but that look, Rhaenyra puts a heart on Cyrax's chest. And I just think that's really cute. See, she has like a heart I don't really like. It's meant to keep the saddle on, but I just think it's sweet. So good for. I like Cyrax for her accessorizing. I'll say, she's very sweet.
Well,
and I like Sea Smoke for his. Sea Smoke has that little soul patch beard. Remember? So I like that.
Oh my god.
Sea Smoke does. Sea Smoke has a soul patch.
Yeah, you're right. I remember that. Yeah, you're right.
That's true. Yeah, that is a good point.
Lalo Salamanca told him to keep it.
I will go ahead and pick Vermithor because I appreciate a dragon that loves music. When he's holding his lighter up to Daemon's song, I'm like, now that's a dragon that appreciates music, so that's a dragon for me. Also, he's got that cool name, Vermithor. I mean, that is a powerful, potent, lizardy name, right? That is an old, big lizard. Just the name really fits the creature. I almost want to say Arax for being David versus Goliath there. Just like that takes, I don't even know if dragons have cojones, but the dragon, Arax went out like a dragon should. They showed that dragons prefer to fight. And it is harder to portray that than a little dragon going after a giant dragon and just like not backing down. That really shows the mindset of a dragon without exposition. So I thought that was pretty well done. All right. So speaking of, I will actually take first this time because I'm going to say basically a related answer to this question, which is, well, we'll go ahead and flip the order on cue here. Who had the best death? And I'll go ahead and say Luke and Arax as my pick. They had an epic death that probably starts the war. It's probably the biggest trigger of the war. This is very sad. It's very tragic. It was full of tension. It was amazingly shot. So just all these different aspects of it worked out. It was the climax. It was set up by Rhaenyra saying, we all have our destinies, and well, I guess this is your destiny, kid. And it just was everything. It just had all the emotions, all the results, all the spectacle, had us talking afterwards. It was the end of the season, so I'll go with that. And remember, just like major, minor, best can mean plot reasons, can mean the way it made you feel, and we're gonna do worst death afterwards. Like I could see you saying Emma Aaron is the best death. I could see you saying Emma Aaron's the worst death. So just a matter of what that means to you. So have at it. Okay, so we're going in reverse order. So Shea, you be next then.
Okay. The best death. What does a good death mean to me? I don't know. I'm not sure what I think is best and worst ultimately, but I guess I'll say, I guess the best death is, oh man, I really don't know what I think best and worst. I guess I'll say Viserys. Sure, he got the best death, and that he had a great performance. That's what it means to me. Is the best death performance. There we go. I answered. Be satisfied.
Hannah, who is your pick? Of course, I think Viserys. If no one had said Viserys, it would have been a little shameful. So I'm glad someone did it. Hannah, who do you think?
I'm gonna give my best death to this one. Okay, I'm gonna give my best death to that soldier that got stepped on.
My prince, my prince.
When he's screaming, "My prince!" He's so excited because he thinks Daemon's coming to save the day, and then he gets immediately killed by the thing that's coming to save him. So, I thought that was such a great, hilarious little addition to just adding more color to the world. So, I loved that.
He may have had the most dialogue of any uncredited character, too, like any unnamed character. And I'm pretty sure he spoke more than Daemon did that episode, because Daemon said nothing in the second half, right? He did yell for Kragar to come out at first, but after that, he said nothing. I love that pick. Zach, you're next.
Best death. One I liked.
Yeah. One you liked, performance you liked, whatever metric. I don't know.
Well, I think Daemon performed really well right before he died.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to say Viserys too.
Cool.
Okay, well, that's a good call.
Yeah,
it's
for obvious reasons.
The man really pulled it off there. Yeah, just made us all weep and
he made the dragons dance.
He did. He really did. Yeah, and it was a big deal.
And it was a very focused moment on him in his death scene, like focusing on him alone. His face and all that. So.
Yeah, they gave him like a whole chunk of that whole episode just dedicated to his exit. Yeah, I mean that's true. Like he as far as fanfare and time laid out. Yeah.
shows like that don't give characters special episodes until they've already been successful for like 2 seasons.
That's a good point.
And then it's like that.
They made it. They gave him extra treatment for his shorter role that was still 8 episodes. Sean, who was your pick for best death?
So I have an inclination to pick Viserys because I think I'm torn also, like what to call a best death. Like part of me wants to say what I want is just to die peacefully in bed. I don't want any pain or suffering. I want to live a long life. I want to, be happy in the end or whatever. And I think Viserys, in a lot of ways, got that. But really, he was suffering and pain. I don't know if he exactly died peacefully. He was kind of out of his mind on drugs. I don't know if I do want to pick that one. So another thing I might pick is dying, I don't know, for something you believe in, trying to make a difference in some way, like, saving someone's life or, bringing about revolution or whatever. And but I don't know if anyone really quite got that either, like even that guy in the ground, like maybe like for the sake of the show, his death reinforces the dangers of the dragons even when they're ostensibly being used in a good way. They end up killing innocents. So, but he didn't mean to do that. He doesn't know he did that. I don't know if I want to pick him either. I think in the end, I might pick Lord Beesbury.
Okay.
His death was relatively quick and painless. He didn't suffer a lot, and he died standing up for what he believed in, what he thought was right. So
that fills your criteria not badly.
Yeah,
I had him as a possible worst death too, because it was just like, so awkward and like accidental and unlikely,
unceremonious.
Yeah. But once again, that's the freedom we have to pick in the category. Okay, we'll stay in this reverse order for another question or two. So we'll go to worst death now. I will say the poor dude killed to be Laenor's burned body. Like that guy, that is ignominious and sad. Not only was he mistreated horribly to be put in that position, but like after the fact, like his family just thinks he ran away or something. Like he's just gone. Like everybody's just like, he just went MIA. Like that scumbag just ran off, In
fact, he's probably a scapegoat for how Laenor got killed, who broke in or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. So that guy just like got totally screwed. So his death is really, you think about him, you don't want to think about him too much. It's like, man, that's just too bad. So Ashaya, who do you got here?
Okay, for worst death, I'll say the death I would least like to experience, both and the people I least wanted to die, and that'll be a trio of Laena, Harwin, Lionel, who all died by fire. And like, I really don't want to die by fire. That sounds really terrible. At least the dragon fire was like pretty instant, but the Harrenhal fire was like extended and like
choking and everything.
And the terror, and I was also sad to see them go, and I was too soon, like all around. So I'll say the fire deaths there.
A dragon must have 3 heads. Nice. Yeah. Okay. Who would be next? Hannah. It's hard for me to go backwards here. Yeah.
Right. You're gonna forget.
You're doing great.
I wanted to I interpreted this category for Rhaenyra's miscarriage. Visenya. Visenya, right, is what she names the baby. Yes. But I felt like, I mean, it was beautiful and also really tragic. And so watching Rhaenyra deal with that situation and the series of events that put her in that position.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hannah said Siri.
I triggered Siri again. Okay, anyway, you need to turn that off.
I've tried.
You can't. It's never.
It won't let me.
The different events that led to Rhaenyra being put into an early labor, and just the whole scene with the child, it was just really visceral and gruesome and sad, and I thought it made me feel a lot of things, and it was really terrible. So that's what I'm going to give my worst death to.
Nice. Okay. Good answer. Sean?
I think I have to pick Emma.
Okay.
I think that was, it's kind of, not only was it kind of right off the bat in the first episode, it's kind of gruesome, and it was also kind of pointless. Like she already had a child that could be the heir, and then okay, fine, it has to be a boy. She has a boy, and he dies too. Like it tears up, Viserys and Rhaenyra, and it kind of sets in motion a lot of the events that go down, and it's sort of a reminder of the burden that's put on women, maybe more so the royal women, I guess. And I don't know, it was awful on many levels.
Yep,
So.
I'm glad that one got mentioned because that was one of the hardest to watch for sure, and I think right up there with the one Hannah named, which is also a difficult pregnancy, a different delivery of a child with severe deformities. So yeah, I can totally agree with that. It's just this kind of stuff can be difficult. It touches on some real world stuff that might be difficult to think about, and especially some people probably didn't want to rewatch those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
How
Zach?
What's that?
We didn't
Oh yeah,
ask Zach.
Zach. I almost moved on without Zach. Zach, who is your pick for the worst death?
The stag in the hunting episode.
Oh,
yeah,
that
was
poor
terrible.
stag.
That was terrible. I
The
agree.
squealing, yeah, that was kind
Yeah.
of rough.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I hated that scene.
We had
That
some
was so
people in the
embarrassing
chat who
for
brought that
Viserys.
up too. You're not
Oh.
alone there, Zach.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that
They're
was-
right. He didn't do it right.
Yeah, he didn't do it right.
It's
yeah.
another reason to pick Viserys for like best actor because like behind the scenes it looks goofy because it's like a dude in a blue suit like a Smurf and they're just like spear that Smurf. They were joking about it because
And look sad about it.
yeah, it looks silly when they're filming it, but then you're like, wow, that's magic. They make it from like ridiculously silly to totally heart-wrenching, and it's not even a person. So, well played TV show.
They're not even a person or a real animal, just a CGI creation.
Also, shout out to the girl that Allison had killed, the handmaiden.
Hey, she didn't have her killed.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
just
think
saying.
She didn't.
I'm just throwing that out there. Let's move on.
So how did it work out covering 20 years in one season? I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's one of those kind of things where it's like, okay, we're going to have to skip things we don't want to skip. Some things are going to be casualties. We already mentioned some of them. 10-year time jump. We lost time particularly with Lionel, Harwin, and Lena. Those are probably the biggest casualties of the time jump, but other things too. And there were other time jumps. As I think I've said before, they're maybe never a plus. They're just things you kind of have to do sometimes. But Zach, when we were talking to you, you said you framed it in a way that kind of makes maybe it kind of is a plus in some light. So actually, we'll start with
It
you.
wasn't total dog shit of a point.
No, I thought you made a good point there. You were like, you thought it worked really well because they showed what they needed to show and were efficient and then moved on. So I'll start with you this time because you
Yeah.
gave an answer that when we talked about it offline this weekend was a little some take I hadn't heard. So you can set the stage for
I just felt
everybody
like it's not a function necessarily of how it was written originally, but it's been a happy function of something that they had to do, which was they had to show the time jumps. So instead of it being something that was potentially a bad thing, it ended up giving us the vibe of having been with the show for like 2 or 3 seasons because we traveled so far with a lot of these characters and the way that they said it and the way that they scored it and the way that they paced it and the way that I said series again. This has never happened to me.
I wonder if any
It's
of our
I
listeners
guess streaming it.
are having their Siri go on.
Everybody at home, I'm really sorry. I usually you have to say hey first, but apparently the computer's different.
it's learning your brain too well.
Yeah, right. You're tapped into me with the wrong
Learning
way,
mode.
so stay away. Anyway, yeah, it was just instead of it being something that was maybe bad, it ended up turning into something that was not just okay or good, but actually added to the show. Is really the takeaway. I thought it was great. I loved it.
Right on. And just to add to that, Fire and Blood itself doesn't have a 10-year time jump, but some of the years it takes like 1 or 2 sentences to deal with an entire year, right? I mean, and that's not abnormal for many other years. Some of them that are in the dance era. I mean, years
Some
that come
years are
before or
pages.
after. Yeah, some years are several pages. Some years are a sentence or two. So those are kind of like time jumps. They're not the same kind of time jump, but it feels different when you're really getting used to a character and their personality and the acting is bringing them to life versus the historical presentation of a character that you're skipping around on. You know, I think that's a little more jarring with a character, an actor you're getting used to. Sean, looks like you're ready to say something.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think we at least touched on it. But when I was on the Daily DVR podcast, we talked about it a little bit more. And I had a thought that we might have complaints the other way if they had spent more time. Because think of the balance, given that they're not going to make this 15 seasons. Right? I don't even think we actually really
Why
want
not?
that, especially when you consider the idea that the kids are going to age up. They won't be able to keep the cast together. Part of the same problem I think they have with the original Game of Thrones. You just can't really plan for things
Bran.
10
You
years
can
from now.
freeze
you
them,
know?
can't
So-
you, in between seasons, and they won't age.
Lotion, baby.
so they would have had to have some of these to not have the time jumps. They would have had to make some weird, tough decisions about do we have another set of actors in between?
Yeah.
How do we fill this space? They're going to end up with some relatively meaningless plot lines. So, some things are going to like come and go and never have mattered, or they're going to be some sort of like, I don't know how to, arbitrary suspense. They're going to try to make something feel important, but it really is only going to be this one episode and it doesn't matter that much. I think that they would have had a lot of problems in the other direction without the time jumps. And so I do think you lose something. I do think we lost a lot of potential for character development and maybe even explanations of things that I can do a fine job imagining how the conversation went that got Otto back his hand, right? Like I can imagine that could have been an interesting series of intriguing dialogues and conflicts between a bunch of characters. Maybe that could have been an episode, but I don't think it was necessary. And
good point. Okay.
And so I think that, maybe we lost something by not having that. We lost something by not having some of the kids develop better. But I it's hard to know this, but I feel like my instinct is it was worth it for the awkwardness that would have had to come making the ages match up, filling some space when there weren't highlight moments that contributed to the central plot. How to budget out how many episodes or seasons there are going to be, things like that. I imagine it's sort of challenges they had, and the writers, the editors, the producers of the show trying to figure this out. And even if I have some complaints, I feel like they did fine. That's my take.
Yeah, great take, Sean. Hannah, what about you?
I would say pretty similar to what Sean is saying. I think that the biggest thing we missed out on was just all these amazing actors and actresses that we were introduced to with all these young characters. I really would have loved to spend more time with them, just seeing how they grew in their roles, because we just had so many unbelievable characters this season. And I guess like a question that I've been thinking about, and I know a lot of folks have been talking about, is time jumps are seemingly not a thing that we're going to be dealing with in the future based on what like some of the actors and things have been saying. And so I wonder how we're going to feel about the time jumps if we're not dealing with them anymore. Yeah. I mean, we don't know anything for sure, so, but
we can go backwards or something.
How will we feel about them again in a year or two, or after season 2
in retrospect, we might be more or less bothered by them.
That's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. Like,
I just think we could have hated them so easily. Like, it could have gone terribly so easily, and I commend them for making it feel seamless and purposeful.
Right on.
I've been trying to keep it at arm's length just to not spoil myself. And so I a lot of times would become aware, like right before the episode or maybe on our podcast, that there was going to be another time jump. And in my mind, like, really, another one? Like every time it's like, they're doing it again? But then every time it happens, like, that was good. That was fine. Every time I was kind of surprised and worried, and every time I was satisfied and content. So
right on. Shaya, what about you?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of the time jumps, but like y'all have said, we really can't know how it would have gone the other way. I think it's quite a gamble for them to be confident in their story and to be a little slower with it. Because I don't think that the battle at Storm's, I don't think the fight at Storm's End needed to be the end of the season. Like, that's what they chose and what they wanted to, but I don't think that was like make or break, in other words. So like, I don't think it had to happen. I think some time jumps had to happen, but maybe a little more less. And ultimately, I think I'm still holding out some hope for a flashback. Like, I would like to see a flashback in the future. Again, it might not make sense organically, but I feel like starting off like each season, like the first episode of the season with like a flashback or something. Like, I feel like there's ways that they could do it in a way that it wouldn't take people out of the story and would give us a little more time with these younger actors. Again, I think there's I don't know. I don't know if I think it's at all likely to happen, but if it happens, I think I'll feel a lot better about the time jumps, I guess, because like, especially when you consider that like some of these younger actors will have aged naturally. So like, let's say there's young Aemond and young Helena and Aegon. If they're a little bit older in 2 years and they want to do a flashback and they're actually at the age, like
that would fit really well. Yeah,
I could in retrospect really like that they set up the ability to have these actors on tap, but I don't expect that. I just hope for it.
That's a good point. Yeah,
that's such a neat idea.
Yeah, and
keep doing the same thing.
But because we got that in Game of Thrones. We saw like young Cersei, like they used the prologue type thing. Like, if you,
so you're saying like Millie in season 2?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if we see like my picture was like,
we could see
Yeah, my picture was seeing like Alicent and Rhaenyra, like a young scene with those two together to give context to something like with them in a future. I don't know. I feel like we could see young,
like the wedding, like
Yeah.
We could
Viserys
see
and
Aegon
Alicent's
and
wedding.
Helena get married.
yeah, something like that. Like I feel like there's
Yeah.
room
Right.
if they have this cast in their back pocket in the roster, so to speak. They've cast them already. It seems like if they wanted to, they could give us a little scene with them. Like if they if they look at, oh wow, these characters were really popular, like these actors were really popular, they might be more likely to do that. I don't know. Like I really think that like it's a long shot and unlikely, but I hope so.
Well, here's a reason why it may not be, I mean, maybe less of a long shot, something you may not have considered, is the opening scene, yes, was a flashback, but it's not just that they had a flashback to start the show, it's that they had Emma Darcy narrate it.
Yeah.
She was telling someone that. She was like, my father, blah, blah, blah. I half expected to see the completion of that scene at some point at the end, like she's talking to her children. Maybe that's yet to come. So I think they left the door open for that. I don't know, like you, would not predict it, but I don't think they've done anything to indicate it absolutely will never happen either. So I think we can, maybe a little optimism. Brandolyn Price says, I agree the jumps actually helped. Like Sean is saying, and the show did such a good job not letting any second go to waste. Every scene is set up. Yeah. I think overall people were like, yeah, they're not great, but they did a good job with them as far as time jumps go. Like if you have to have time jumps, those were solid time jumps. Like maybe better to not have them, but given the source material, it's hard to imagine without having some time jumps.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on here.
Oh, actually, I will say one more thing about the time jumps. I do wish that we had young Daemon and young Viserys. I personally wish we'd gotten a recasting.
There's still time.
I guess that you're right there, but like we saw Viserys many years before, and it caused confusion for Sean towards his age, and I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna recast the characters, like the Great Council scene maybe could have been recast, but that's just my other thought.
Right on. Okay, so one more question before our halfway break, and our second half will contain a little bit deeper questions. We're getting into some of the themes and some of the recurring items that we'll talk about, like misunderstandings, communications, dragon lore, including lack of control and characters, and a few more silly questions like favorite non-dragon animal in the show. All right, well, let's see this. So this question is, what is your biggest surprise or favorite surprise of the season? We'll stay in reverse order. I'll say an easy one. I'm assuming you guys are going to pick some of these other ones. There's some pretty straightforward, low-hanging fruit here that were very surprising that if we don't name them, it'd be almost a surprise. But I'll just start off with Viserys' sweet, sweet Valyrian model. No way we could have seen that coming. And maybe it wasn't a surprise, like, whoa, Valyrian model, but it was a surprise, like, oh, what is that? Oh, that's a Valyrian model. And it was there. It was kind of omnipresent. Each episode, it grew larger, just about, and then it started to have cobwebs and a rat. And now we're sad because we're like, well, what's going to happen to it next? So it actually had some storytelling power with it because it was like what Viserys was focused on when he probably should have been doing other stuff, but it's also really cool because we're like, well, maybe he should be governing more, but we don't want him to give up on this either. Like, spend time on this also. Like, definitely keep up with this model. Ashaya, what about you? What's a surprise you wanted to highlight or something you thought was really particularly fun?
I did really like the Laenor not being killed. I had been honestly kind of dreading the public reaction to like after having a gay guy brutalized and killed, then like immediately afterwards having another gay guy. Like like it's everyone dies in this show, but it is like I just knew that the public was gonna have controversy over it. Like I was mostly dreading the public reaction to it because that is a trope.
Yeah.
It just is. It's not House of the Dragon's fault that it's a trope, but it is. And so I appreciated their change there as much as I'm curious how that's going to pan out ultimately, and the jury's out with how well it was not executed.
Yeah.
But like the jury's out for me, like if they actually wrap that up in a way and follow up with Laenor, I'm more on board with it. If they just kind of like wrote him off and we never see him again, I'm less happy with that surprise. But either way, I overall was for it.
Cool.
And I know I'm supposed to say one, but I still have to give a special shout out to Helena. I just appreciated her in general.
What about you, Hannah? Who's your pick, or what's your pick?
I'm going to get my pick to kind of a more broader theme, but I would say I was most surprised by just the use of prophecy in House of the Dragon and how thoughtful it was. I felt like with the Ice and Fire prophecy, with the dragon dreams, I was worried that they were not going to be able to, or that they wouldn't go deep into what makes Game of Thrones so magical, but they really did a great job, in my opinion, in sprinkling in this like deep magic and lore and history, for lack of a better word, that I felt like I was worried that we would maybe get brushed over, or it's a prequel, so it's going to be cheap, or not as thoughtful as maybe it is in Fire and Blood. So I was very pleasantly surprised with how they handled some of the more mystical aspects.
Right on. Yeah, it was a really big part of the story. You're right. It drove the story really well, almost better than original Game of Thrones did, which is kind of weird because they had more, like the prophecies there were bigger and more present, but they didn't use them as much, except for like Melisandre and Stannis. It was quite a big part of that. Zach, what would you pick here?
I think you guys have a great little list here in the doc. I agree with the Shea. The Lanor fake out was a true surprise because it's not in the source material. Same with the Rhaenys Meleys thing. But I'd say I was probably the most shocked by the intro not changing.
Oh,
was like, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
good
true.
call. Yeah,
That's true.
right on. Okay.
I was surprised by that too.
Yeah.
It's quite a surprise when it came on. I was like, "We're doing this." Okay.
I have to say, I have a little part of me that's hopeful that like that was the intro for season 1, and that they'll change it for season 2, just because like they didn't have the painted table set up yet, and now that that's been set up, and the Valyria model is probably not going to be very featured in season 2, so like. There's a little bit of me that like I know that I shouldn't
You've given them a way to get out.
Yeah, I've given them an out. I'm saying it now. You have an out. You have an excuse for why you can change.
Guys.
Take it. Everyone hates the intro.
Yeah.
It's like not clear enough. I literally don't know anyone that's like, oh yeah, it's a hit. It teaches me so much every episode.
Love that Game of Thrones intro though.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
That original
show
that's
has the better intro. I
home
think
grand slam,
90% of people would or something like that. If I were to predict the vote, it would be yeah.
It was a neat idea for House of the Dragon, but I don't think it was executed as well as it could or should have.
Yeah,
been, right.
Just making the
Little
symbols a
big
little
looks,
clearer.
it's a little
Maybe was all they
small.
needed.
Yeah. If they had been just closed in a little bit more and held it a little bit longer.
Well, Sean, what's your pick for biggest surprise? Here?
Classic.
Well, I probably have a couple answers you guys might not have had in your radar because I didn't know the books at all.
Yeah,
It was a huge
your answer
surprise
here is
for me.
interesting.
Yeah, it was a huge surprise for me for Luke to slash out Aegon's eye. That was
Aemond.
like holy crow.
You said
Or,
Aemond.
sorry, Aemon. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was a big surprise.
And for Luke to get killed in the end too. Those are both like holy crap. I was not expecting those things at all.
Yeah, I have to poll more. I'd be
saying-
curious to poll more Unsullied people. Your answers here are particularly interesting.
A couple other that maybe are related to being Unsullied. I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised overall that the show was more of a drama. I was my biggest concern kind of going into this. They chose this because they wanted a bunch of over the top dragon action. They thought that would be popular and successful, and it's not what I wanted. And I feel like they gave me what I wanted. I'm surprised that the dragon action has been relatively minimal and the focus has been on drama and characters. So happy surprise. And one last surprise I got to mention here. So I'm stealing some extra answers. But this one does come from my sort of, I'm generally Unsullied, but I still have these sort of like vague notions. Like I knew, I've heard of Daemon Targaryen. I know there is a Dance of the Dragons that I guess is a civil war that's going to happen. It's becoming more clear as I watch this. I had heard of like the Blacks and the Greens, but I didn't even know that it had anything to do with Dance of the Dragons or this time period or anything, where that's become more clear now. But the thing that I kind of had this vague idea of that I'm really surprised about how it's playing out in the show is that Kristen Cole's not that bad. I mean, he's not like the hero, but I thought he was going to eat babies or something. He's not quite the...
He may as well
like
have.
so far
He
he's
may as well
standing
have.
up to the old white banker. He put down the lying cop, right? Like he's like
Sean.
That's great.
See?
Yeah, no, this is something
loyal to his queen. Like,
we're gonna have to have a whole episode.
Which
on,
queen, Sean?
We're gonna have to have a whole episode on
Exactly.
Kristen, but no, which I think we were planning on doing anyway, because the characters that generate the most discussion. It'd be good to kind of like line it up and really just get into it, because we kind of every once in a while we talk about it, it comes up and we spend a few minutes on it, but it'd be good to kind of really focus on that topic, because you do have a point. Like Kristen is worse than show Kristen so far, and I'm again, that's a smokescreen, not me saying it will get better or worse, just not committing one way or the other. And I also don't know, because they could change some things, right? And there's interpretations from Within Fire and Blood. But I think you're right that those of us who came in with the preconceived notion are put him up a notch or two higher on the bad scale than he perhaps deserves.
And again, it's hard to even have a complete conversation with me because you don't want to spoil stuff.
Right.
But and I don't really know because I haven't read the books. But it seems clear to me, despite all that, the show is trying to keep it a little bit more balanced.
Yes.
They're trying to make it so that people might choose one or the other, or might still look up to one, even though they did this thing. I feel like I think they know what they're doing, right? Yeah. They're gonna have some Game of Thrones Joffreys or Ramsays. Like, they're gonna have some straight up villains like Larys, it seems to be. But they're gonna have these characters that are sort of gray, like the Hound or whatever. That they do some bad things, but they do some good things, and it's hard to decide or know. And maybe it's easier to decide when you see how it completes, right? Like, at first, I was kind of a fan of Tywin until I realized he committed genocide. I'm like, okay, well, whatever positive thing I thought I saw him is wiped out by that terrible thing. So if Krista and Cole, burns down a castle with 100 orphans in it, okay, he's clearly a bad guy. But so far, they're not doing that. I feel like they're keeping him on the edge. So.
Right on. Well said. Okay. Here's a word from the official Lord of the Rings Rings of Power podcast. I've been listening to this show. It's quite informative, and host Felicia Day has a guest every episode, usually an actor, someone very closely associated with the show. They can ask in-depth questions and get really in touch with what was going on behind the scenes, what these different actors are doing to bring their characters and Middle-earth to life. And Felicia Day really knows her stuff. She's an extremely enthusiastic host, seems very happy to be talking about Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, someone she was raised on it with, like her father read it to her, things like that. So she has a very long, endearing love of it. And she's very good at talking. She's a natural at discussing things geek. Each episode of the podcast features exclusive interviews with the series showrunners as well. It seems like a recurring feature they have right at the end. So they have J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay come in and talk about a little bit of each episode. There's one episode that corresponds to each episode of the show. You could potentially do like a rewatch and listen to each episode of the podcast alongside it to see, what little things are shouted out, what little Easter eggs were present, things like that. Felicia goes behind the scenes a lot, not just the Easter eggs, but other interviews with cast and crew and jaw-dropping stories that you couldn't have possibly suspected. So, watch The Rings of Power on Prime Video and listen to all 8 episodes of the official Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power podcast for free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app now.
Or
How long are those episodes, Aziz?
They're only about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. I haven't listened to the whole season yet, but the first 2 were about that long. It's possible they get longer, but yeah, I think the first one was 35 minutes and the second one was almost exactly the same.
Or you could do what many people have told me that they did after I brought it up last week, which is watch or listen to a podcast for a show you've never seen.
Yeah.
Which I made that joke last week and people replied and said, I do that. And I was like, okay, then. Good for you.
Yeah, I would recommend watching and listening, but hey, you can just listen if you want. That is totally valid.
It's a bold choice.
I
Yeah.
know. I think it's so interesting.
I have done that, not with shows, but I've listened to the show I listened to. I haven't listened to recently, but I've listened to a lot in the past. Is the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast, and they review. Once they finish the Lovecraft library, they moved on to other stories, and sometimes I'm just like, what do they have to say about this story that I've never even heard of? So like, let alone read. So yeah.
Okay, so you're one of those weirdos.
I guess I belong in the weirdo group, but yeah. Okay, well, let's get back to our questions. Speaking of other shows, with Rings of Power here in the recent rearview mirror of our discussions here, what's something that House of the Dragon is doing that explains its success as compared to other fantasy shows or shows in general? We don't have to be critical or trash other shows, but why is it standing above? Why is it doing so much better? Like, from a purely viewer perspective, not even like what we like or what we don't like. What is making it succeed as compared to other shows?
Incest.
Incest. That's clearly it must
if
be
we follow
incest.
like the various unsavory websites, I have it on good authority that incest is popular.
It's the only thing that Game of Thrones has that these other things don't have. It's incest. We found the missing ingredient here. Sean, what do you? Let's start with you this time.
Yeah, I've got a couple of immediate answers. One is name brand recognition.
That helps,
right?
Sure.
And there are some other shows that also have that, like Lord of the Rings or Witcher or whatever. But I'm pretty sure Game of Thrones has it at this moment in time, maybe more than anything else.
I don't know that it has a bigger name recognition than Lord of the Rings. It might.
Maybe not Lord of the Rings, but it's on par. And Lord of the Rings is also successful. So
yeah, very true.
Although Lord of the Rings budget is way, way bigger. So
that's for sure.
Not the House of Dragons budget is small. Man, watching the behind the scenes on that, it sparks another answer I have is that they're really making it, I don't know, on a bunch of levels. You know, the sort of effects and production and sets and the crew that they have involved is, you know, it's kind of not fair to other shows just can't get that kind of commitment, you know, to produce something so epic. But another thing it does, I think, I want to believe, it's what I said a minute ago, is there's much more focus on these characters and their drama. I think even when there is action, we care more about it when we care about the characters involved, when we like understand what's at stake, when we feel their motivations, when we're rooting for one thing to happen or another. Just like two people running around with swords and horses or whatever, if we don't know where they're going or what happens if they win or who loves them and who, et cetera, like you need all that to matter. And I think that they're getting the right ratio of set up to payoff. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of other, especially fantasy shows, it seems like the point of them is to have this action. I guess we need some backstory. Where House of the Dragon seems like we're going to develop all these stories and plot lines. I guess we'll have some action too, you know.
Right on. Well said. Zach, so that you were out of the room for just a second. The question is, what's something House of the Dragon is doing? Okay, so how would you answer this question?
I think that the main difference is that the universe of George R. R. Martin, and HBO's done it for a while too, which is why they fit so well, presents on these genres in a way that provides an approach from modern people that actually is what they're thinking versus a sort of childlike approach to a subject or to a genre. It's still within the genre, but it's like a smarter version of what the characters are actually thinking, like more of the subtext. And if I hate to keep comparing it back to Rings of Power, but you can compare it to a ton of things. Witcher has a lot of that too, because Geralt is pretty emotive, and his bard and him have a lot of frank conversations, but there's not a lot of frankness that happens in Rings of Power. It gets kind of close. It gets kind of close between Durin and Elrond, but in general, I think that Game of Thrones has always, and like I said, the HBO prestige TV is basically defined by that, existing within these genres and having a very sort of like a live character or a set of alive characters that have really honest and frank conversations about subjects, and so it can be turned into the artistic version of that by the way that they film inside of the Red Keep instead of the way that Lord of the Rings would do it, magical, like the way that walking into the Citadel and the original series looked like. It's always like that. They'll just have like little shots of the hallways and stuff in House of the Dragon or in Game of Thrones, and it feels like it's a ground level, like you're actually there, versus it being some mythic tale like Sword in the Stone being presented to you. I think the TV audiences like it because we're all both not that smart and way smarter than when fairy tales were popular.
Well said, Zach. Hannah, how would you answer this question? What's something you've noticed that you think lets House of the Dragon stand out?
I would say, in agreeing with both what Zach and Sean said as well, I would also include that I feel like House of the Dragon is really accessible for anybody who either isn't familiar with Game of Thrones or who isn't familiar with just like the world or the Targaryens or even fantasy in general. I felt like they made the series just super easy to get into. You didn't need any background or story or prior knowledge to be able to jump in. And that's largely due to the fact that it's a family conflict and that it's a familiar kind of issue between friends and family that you would see in your day-to-day. So
Yeah, I guess
You-
fighting over power is a little simpler than some of the things that get fought over in some of these other shows. Like the power is a little more supernatural or vague, maybe.
So I'll give.
I think.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I just wanted to say both what Zach and Hannah were saying, or something that was kind of in my mind too, is that it's a little more relatable. It's a little bit more relatable.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Jay?
Yeah, and so I'll give a real answer. I was joking about the incest. I do feel like there is a little element where, like, House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, like they do get a little freaky with things, and I think people do like that. Like the other ones, other things are a little bit sanitized ultimately. And I think I think that there is an element of that. But I was mostly joking, and I will say I think it does come down to like the world building and the world itself, which is that this is very clearly like a really well lived in and fleshed out world, and like that also comes across when it comes to the costuming and the props and the set design and production and all that, because like I look at something like Rings of Power or Wheel of Time and they just look clean and new and not lived in to me. There's just something about the visuals of it that it doesn't have this grimy real sense to it, and I think that's something that Star Wars did really well with too, which is giving us this lived-in world. And I'll also say I think Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon stands apart in that they're very adult, and we've talked about it before, and that like you think about like the biggest fandoms in the world, and they're by and large children can watch it. Even Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, or even Wheel of Time, I think, honestly. Or, like, again, you compare it to Marvel or some other things, Star Wars. A kid could watch that. You can take your 8-year-old child and see that. You wouldn't do that for Game of Thrones, for House of the Dragon. And I think that does make the fandom, the fan base, the experience different to me.
Very well said.
So yeah, I'll say realism, the not being sanitized, being very adult, I think goes a long way.
Great takes, y'all. I'll say y'all left me with an easy one, so I'll take it. George R. Martin. I mean, they're drawing off of the writing of him. You know, I mean, you could say, yeah, Rings of Power is drawing off of J.R. Tolkien. That's great, but they're not. They're drawing off of his notes, not his full writing. That's the difference. Like, yes, the original movies drew off that. The Hobbit did, but Rings of Power is drawing off of like the appendices, which is great stuff, but it's not prose, right? They don't have dialogue that they can insert, like, even Fire and Blood has some great dialogue they can insert, unlike A Song of Ice and Fire. So, yeah, I think that's a big strength. Maybe an easy thing to pick, but it's important.
This may seem blasphemous to a lot of people, and are not even very confident in the statement, but Martin might be writing better stuff than Tolkien. You know, like just
to each his own.
Literally, just
I would say
being
so.
being from a more modern time is
that helps. Yeah.
There's just more knowledge, more base of experience for a writer to have and to work with. They're more likely to be in touch with modern issues and
that's a good
concerns, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Yeah, and you can tell, like, the way A Song of Ice and Fire has been written, there has been some changes in the way George writes over time. You can tell, man, we're more tapped into those changes. Like, if we were Tolkien scholars, we might notice that the way he wrote early in his career, we might notice differences to later in his career. But maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't be as like Tolkien grew up in an era where
in the books at that point.
Yeah, well, like Tolkien did grow up in an era of internet where like he was getting tons of information all the time. George is in this era where his more information is at his fingertips, and it's just a different world. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Here's a more easy question. Let's have a little fun with this one. Favorite non-dragon animal used in the show? Y'all might not realize there were quite a few. I mean, there was the stags, there was a boar, there was rats, there was a pig, there was crabs, there were lots of horses, there were lambs, there was a goat that got torched at the dragon pit. So plenty of answers possible here. I kind of named most of them, I think, already from y'all to pick from. But we'll go back to Sean. You're back to first here. What's your favorite non-dragon animal?
I don't think there were any cats.
I don't remember seeing a cat. Yeah,
I can't remember. So like, I think the scene with the stag has got to be my favorite. I think my favorite.
The white one or the brown one?
Non-dragon animal. The brown one. With Viserys had to kill it. We talked about that earlier. I really did. That scene was amazing on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
But I like horses. They're like cats and horses are my favorite animals. So I don't know. I'm tempted to pick. Do I have to pick a certen horse?
The one that fell on Rhea.
Yeah, that's my least favorite horse. Screw that horse.
No. We ruled that one out.
But by the way, minor side note: going back and watching the first couple episodes, I was reminded that we speculated a lot. They made several points about the smell of dragons.
Oh yeah.
And we were wondering how that was going to come into play, that someone was going to be like caught having been on a dragon when they weren't supposed to or something, and it never did. Or did it?
May have in
did
that
Daemon know?
Yeah.
Did Daemon know the smell of the dragon on him was going to spook that?
Yeah, maybe
horse?
he rubbed dragon all over himself. He's like
knew
did
you
this on
guys were
Caraxes,
crazy.
smearing his body all over.
It's like, nope, that's not a thing.
Zach, what would
Guys,
I
not
think
dragon
that's a
thing.
Zach?
It's not a thing
not.
for
It
you,
can't
but
I wish it was. That'd be another thing to talk about. What were we gonna say?
I was gonna say your pick now. What's your animal call out here?
I'm gonna go opposite of Sean. I mean, I still can look at the White Hart, almost the GIF, even the cropped GIF makes me feel stuff. You know, I know it's just a TV show. It's not prose, like you said, and that wasn't even in Fire and Blood. But what they made up was, I love that. I like when imagery is so symbolic that it is inarguably definitive of something that should exist in the universe, and like that is what that was. Looking at the camp from the crest line after that weekend, let's call it, even though it was a day, and then there's the White Hart that Otto was talking about the whole time. My God,
Zach, do you want to rub yourself all over that white elk?
I would love to. You can velvet on me all you'd like. That's my Patronus, Sean.
Hannah, what's your pick here?
Oh, sorry, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay, we skipped out for a second. I'm gonna give my favorite animal to the pink dread.
Yeah.
Both.
Shay would have picked that if you
Both
hadn't.
You're
probably.
right. You're exactly right.
Yeah, sorry, Ashaya. Both when they introduced him to Aemond, and then also later when the pig was brought in front of Aemond, and everybody was laughing, and he lost his mind. So, shout out to the pink dread.
I just don't want pink to be thought of as dreadful.
Right?
The Sean Pink Dread. Okay, Shaya, you're next.
Okay, I would have said the pink dread because I did love the high concept pranking. Appreciated that. I did really like the decision to have Helena be into the various bugs and all that, and like her holding spiders and just like that whole like, so not like I've not no shout out to any particular bug that she had, but just that interest of hers. But I'll give one more mention, which was to the crabs, which was I named for two reasons. One, I learned that crabs will eat people, which I did not know was a real thing. So that was educational. And two, I saw a really funny video edit on Twitter of Matt Smith when he's in like Morbius or whatever, and he's like shirtless dancing. So it's him dressed like that, and they edited on like the silver hair and have him dancing like they use like green. I don't know, they had him dancing in front of all these crabs, just like tons of crabs, and like this really funny song plays, and like I it was just a big highlight. For me, was Damon dancing with crabs. I guess.
That's really good.
I'll have to find that video and send it to y'all.
Shout out as well to the rats. Sean, you noticed those lambs to the slaughter at the Dragon Pit. That was a good catch, and we book readers noticed there's a perhaps more potential setup in that moment as well. I'll say the pug for a similar reason you said, Ashaya, because it was educational. Like in that moment, there was like, pugs? Does that really fit the world building? And then we come to find out that pugs have been around since like 400 BC in the real world. Like the Chinese like started developing them a long time ago.
Snouts.
With those flat snouts.
Without those flat snouts.
Without the flat snouts. But anyway, but with a different type of flat snout. Like the general idea was there.
Almost flat.
So is no one going to pick the maggots? They were trying to save Vic's life.
I did not think of the maggots. See, I told you there were a lot of animals this season, y'all. We didn't mention this. Yeah, Shaya put Helena's bugs on there.
Hand in there.
Yeah,
I thought they were the nicest maggots in town. At least that's one thing I noticed. It was the finest maggots in the kingdom.
There was also on the ship. We saw that the fish get chopped. I think the scene when Kristen wanted Rhaenyra to run off with him. Do you remember that cut scene?
Oh yeah, that's true.
I don't remember the fish. That's a good memory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's ask a prediction question. We don't usually we're gonna do most of our prediction type questions and answers will be next week when we spoilers are out. But with Harold Westerling, we have no idea. There are no book spoilers on him. He's just an open question right now. So again, we'll start with Sean, the least spoiled. Any thoughts on what Harold Westerling's going to do? And again, you can't really you're not guessing against expected knowledge here. None of us know. He died 15 years before in the book. He just like dies peacefully. There's no drama behind his like old guy, just passes and that's it. So here they must have other plans for him, which makes sense given it's a famous actor. That was a hint that he would have a bigger role, that it was Graham McTavish. But so far that bigger role hasn't materialized. So anything you want to say about him or what you might want to just predict or guess, we're all ears because none of us really know at this point.
This might be a little bit of a letdown, but my prediction is we don't see him again. I think there's a combination of reasonings here. Is that I think that there's so much is going to happen that I don't think at the end of it he will be able to clearly choose the right one to follow or like or agree with the quote unquote right one to follow. Does that make sense? I think the nature, like he's waiting for there to be a true king to follow. I don't know if he will ever feel there is a true king to follow. Does that make sense? I don't know if they'll show that in any way or if he just won't come. I think there's so much other stuff to focus on. There's been these time jumps that I guess are going to stop, but that means that a lot more stuff will happen in a shorter span of time. I won't be surprised. It's not like I'm convinced he's not showing back up again. I just don't quite expect it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. And maybe they just didn't bring him back for season 2. It'd be an easy way to just be like, oh well, never mind.
Yeah, being a bigger actor, maybe I don't know, maybe that's a reason to not bring him back. Like they have to pay more money. He's got other projects going on.
Who knows? Yeah.
Maybe it's a further misleading by having a big actor. That I don't know. I can imagine a lot of angles, but my default is he doesn't come back.
Okay. Zach, any prediction for Harold Westerling? Ideas?
Move on to Ashea next. Hannah, just use the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
Headphones are a little bit far from each other.
All right, sounds good. For Harold Westerling, like I really thought there was a chance that like they were gonna crown Aegon and that Harold was just gonna show back up like, okay then.
Now we have a king.
Now we have a king. And then I thought there was a chance he would. He said, "I need a king." He just took a little vacation, so like I feel like that is still possible. But like ultimately, I think he's most likely to show up with Rhaenyra and to then die in doing something for Rhaenyra. That's my prediction.
Yeah, he was kind of close to her initially, like he was guarding her a lot. Yeah.
And while we have a moment, I did find the Daemon crab dance.
Okay,
put it on screen.
Oh my gosh, good.
Here it is for y'all.
10 a 10. Put my spend to spend. Have sex. Excel. Put my ends a yens. Put my best a best. Put my 10 a 10. Put my
Just
That's
that.
hilarious.
I don't know. It really delighted me. It was an edit that I loved. So I love the crabs for that.
That's hilarious. So we
got Hannah back.
To Hannah. What is your prediction for Harold Westerling? Any ideas on what are they going to do with this character? Where he might turn up? Any thoughts at all? It's a big mystery.
If he's smart, he will just leave and get away from everything. I agree. I would agree with what Shea was saying about showing up somewhere with Rhaenyra, probably either in the background or as more of a main character. I felt like he made a pretty bold statement, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him again at her side.
Yeah. Zach?
Astapor.
He's going to fully go Barristan here, huh?
Just look out for small little creatures on the ground.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah,
I agree with Hannah. I think that's it.
I think Rhaenyra is where he's going to turn up too. That just makes so much sense given who that's who he was attached to. The one thing I want to that backs up what Sean is saying is that he said there's no king, so I don't take orders from you. Well, why did he have to take his white cloak off? He took his cloak off too. Like if there's no king to give him orders, why does that mean he has to like take his garb off? Like,
I mean, that's the signifier of you resigned to me.
But why is he resigning though? That's why I don't get it. He's like, well, no, you can't tell me what to do. You're not the king. Why does he have to resign? It's like in spite of that. Like Kingsguard served for life. Like I think just you can't tell me what to do. You're not the king. I think is enough.
Yeah,
like he can just walk out. Why he doesn't take his cape off?
Or maybe he was like, "Oh, I've been looking for a reason to get out of this job for a while. Like, this is my chance. Like, I'm gonna hop on it.
This is gonna turn into a war. I better get out of here." Yeah,
because they could just like get 3 men to hold you and put you in a cage. But if he leaves right now, you can probably get away from that because they're still confused. Maybe that's what he was thinking. Maybe.
Another thought is that would they have him back? Like, if he's resigned, like whoever wins, especially if it's the Greens, given how he left, they might be like, "You're not in the King's Guard anymore."
I mean, they gave
in fact,
his
you're
position
under
away.
arrest.
They gave the Lord
Yeah.
Commandership to Christian Cole.
They
He
gave
doesn't
his
have
job
his
away.
job.
So that's another reason for him to go to Rhaenyra. Or she'll-
Are both Rhaenyra and Alicent / Hagan / Otto, whoever, are both of them going to put 6 people under King's Guard and just wait for Harold? Like, we got to hold the spot for him.
They
Is that
might.
how it's going to go?
That's what Renly did. Renly held a spot for Barristan. So
okay.
like they,
Yeah,
my
that's true.
God,
Yeah.
Good point.
he totally did. So it's possible
Wow,
because
that's the
they
sweetest
thought
thing
he would
that's ever
add a
happened.
lot to. They were like, well, if we get him, it'll add a lot to our
Wow,
cause. If
and
Barristan chooses us,
Agency and
the heroic knight, the honorable, like him choosing, it would be such a big boon if they got it. So
Do you think there's a world in which Harold supports a third claimant, or do you think he's only?
he went to Laenor. Yeah,
What?
he went to Laenor. He's like, my king is like, he's an honorable guy, but not real smart when it comes to following the line of succession. He's like, I swear, I interpreted the laws, and you are. He's like, why? Why me? Like, how
The
did
new
you
Vulture
reach
King.
that conclusion, bro?
and find me.
Yeah, yeah. How did you find me? Like, oh. So a super chat from Mr. Marmello from down in New Zealand. Of course, there's plenty of extra Tolkien fans down there. Mr. Marmello says, "Shame, Tolkien is the true king. Defund."
Actually, you're funding us, so thanks.
We appreciate that, Mr. Marmello. All in good fun. I do appreciate Tolkien. Without Tolkien, we would not have George R. R. Martin. At least not. We'd have a very different George R. R. Martin. Let's put it that way. Round table themes. Let's talk about a few other things here. Some things that we talked about off and on throughout the season that we can now talk about as a whole. There'll be some more next week as well, ones that involve spoilers. Like, for example, we're going to talk about childbirth and motherhood a little bit more next week because next week one of our guests is a mother. So I thought that would be better to save for that, or someone that has a real world experience. Lack of control over dragons and dragon lore is what we'll start here. We in the beginning, I was like, hey, folks, can you think of any times where in history we credited a human for something that may have been taken by a dragon? I want to bring that back around because I want to talk about Drogon for a minute and remind folks of a few examples of that before we shout out some answers here. Dany has very little control over him in her Dance with Dragons chapters. He's going where he wants. She's just riding him like, okay, he's going hunting. I'm following him. She's kind of noticing things about his tendencies. Like, dragon's first instinct is always to attack, which we saw that with Arax in sad fashion. And he's devastated Daznak's pit, right? He flew in, was drawn by the blood and chaos and so many people. He saved her in the House of the Undying, and the House of the Undying folks were all like, oh, a willful beast. Shall we teach you the secret language of dragon speech? She's like, I don't trust you. You're like some trope out of a children's prophecy story. Like, you're right to not. You are the chosen one. Yeah, like, don't trust that. A dragon is no slave is a repeated phrase. We love that. Balerion comes back around. You mentioned that earlier, Sean, with maybe Viserys was just intimidated by it or shown like, I can tell why we don't have any control, just my experience here. Araya, who rode Balerion before he ever did, and it was one of the worst things we've ever read about in Fire and Blood. It's so horrible. Sure, I doubt she ever felt in control at any point of Balerion. So, yeah.
Remember, I pointed out on that episode that Luke kind of knew that he wasn't going to be able to control the dragon.
Yeah.
Before he got on, he's like, all right, listen, focus, follow what I say. He kind of knew that this was going to be a shaky moment, and maybe Aemond also, right?
It's like when you own a
He was
dog
feeling
and
shaky too.
yeah, it's like when you own a dog that always chases squirrels, and you see squirrels, you're like, all right, get ready to, all right, dog, be in
dog
control
park.
here. Resist.
9 times out of 10, you might be able to heel, walk, sit, shake paws, might have control, but that 1 time out of 10 you don't, the dog runs off and
Yeah.
you lose it, or it attacks a squirrel or another dog or whatever else,
Exactly.
And I feel like maybe dogs, which have evolved with all humans all around the world for all centuries, are different than dragons, which have evolved for a little while with one race of people, like a small group of them. Yeah, I think that the more I think about it, the more obvious it is.
I'll have you know that in the word dragon is contained the letters D, O, and G. So,
So my first thought was Harrenhal. I wonder if
Oh.
Harrenhal was intentionally burnt down by the Dragon Rider. The dragon just went, I bet I can do it.
Well, he did, according to the histories, and maybe it changed it. He's threatened to do it. He's like, I'm going to do it. So, and like the entire castle was just,
Still a chance.
but still,
No,
maybe he did more than
Dragon
was
got the
asked of him. I don't know. Yeah.
He threatened to do the thing he knew he couldn't stop his dragon from doing anyway.
Right.
Okay.
He's like, I
He's
heard
like,
you wanted to
yeah,
do this.
leaned into it like Aikido. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's like Aemond and Vagar, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, I would like to remove this threat. Wait, don't. Thank you.
Let's ask y'all that. We the three of us regulars here already answered this question, but Hannah and Zach, Hannah, starting with you, what do you think Aemon's going to do when he lands? Is he going to tell his family he did it on purpose, or is he going to lie? Or what do you think he's going to do? Is he going to just be like, it was an accident? What do you think he's going to say?
We've been talking about this so much behind the scenes too.
It's a big open question, right?
It's a big question, and I love that they gave us this question because I think that when we read Fire and Blood, it felt very Aemon's a bad guy. But I feel like the way that things played out made the whole situation more heartbreaking and interesting.
Yes.
I would have said like baby Aemond would have told his mom, but I don't.
Aemond.
I don't know if he would want to come forward with that information. You know, I feel like he's trying to be this really hard, intense guy, and to admit that his dragon got away from him, I think would be a difficult thing for him to admit. So either he owns it and says he does it on purpose, or he tries to play it off as he had nothing to do with it. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess you could potentially argue that like Luke fell. Like, I don't know, maybe you can't, but I think that he's going to do his best to not. I don't know. I mean, for his character, I like this idea that he owns it, that he says he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that.
I like the idea of him like, what? Did Arax never come home?
Right.
I wasn't
I have
even
no
there.
idea like what happened. Maybe he went with Lenor.
But yeah, we talked in
Allison's going to flip.
we talked about this when we were on X-Ray Vision this past week, and we like basically said that Aemon will come to the he'll realize and be aware that it's better to be evil than incompetent.
Yeah, he doesn't want to look
Yeah,
like a fool.
exactly.
But I do like
Yeah.
the idea that Aemon reveals the truth to someone, to one
Maybe to
person,
his
whether
mother or-
that's his mother or a future partner or Helena or someone. I would like to see that.
That was a new thought that I started to have, that maybe he would come back sort of ashamed or remorseful and tell Alicent, and Alicent would tell him, don't.
Or
Don't tell
Otto,
other
or
people that.
someone says, no,
Yeah.
own it. Just-
Someone else will tell him. that he
Kristen
needs
Cole,
to stay.
maybe. Yeah, you're right. The advice could come from Elle. That's a very good point. He may not realize it, and someone else may say, no, you need to own this. What do you think, Zach? Any other takes on this?
I'm still confused why it's better to be evil than silly.
Well,
Evil is so cringe.
Not
Evil
silly,
is-
incompetent.
incompetent. Yeah, he doesn't want to look like like he can't control his dragon in front of the whole realm. Like, it's a philosophy. It's not something that you and I would
just
necessarily agree with.
the key
To
word.
look like. It's better as someone in this realm to look like someone who's done a bad thing but is a very badass person and competent than someone who just is an incompetent doofus. Like, I do feel like that is.
I don't agree,
okay.
but I understand why you might think
I
that.
agree. I think that it is true for people in Westeros. I don't think that today it's better to be looked at as evil than incompetent.
Yeah, I don't
And
think
I
it's
don't think
ethical.
I would
looked at,
choose.
but
it's
I don't think
irrelevant.
I would choose that to look. I would rather look incompetent than look evil. But again, I think that as a prince of the realm in Westeros, it's better to look one way than the other. To me,
Especially a guy who was like, I would totally be king.
yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't think you want to look like Aemond doesn't want to be an embarrassment. We just saw the pink dread thing and like how prickly he was over feeling like
good
he's made
point.
fun of. Like, I don't
Well,
think that
his
he wants
pride.
He's
to be
already
a laughing
failed that
stock.
then,
Like,
because have you ever seen the way he walks around the whole place? He already loses that. I just think it's funny.
There's also a couple other factors. It doesn't have to be as extreme as evil. Like like some people might see it as evil, but he
Right.
might say like
Ruthless.
He
It may just look
legitimately
ruthless.
I
could
didn't mean
say
to.
right. He legitimately could say, "I was attacked."
Like, tell the
He
truth, though.
blew
Yeah.
fire
But that's
on
the
me.
thing. Like, would anyone
Exactly.
believe him if he said that?
Right? Yeah.
I think if he said it truly, they would. He'd be like, I have Vagar.
I mean, of course,
Like,
How
yeah,
do you
that's-
control
How do you
Vagar?
control Vagar?
Right. Right.
Either way, I love what you're saying.
That could
Like
make a difference in the rebellion.
the way it sets up potential future examples of this as well, and in terms of as
For
well, it
sure.
impacts a Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
It impacts future dragons. It impacts past dragons. It's great groundwork for all dragon lore going forward. So with that in mind as well, let's ask a question here. Although, first we have a super chat from Dean Brown. Says, regardless of Vagar and Caraxes seeing war in the past, no one alive has any dragon versus dragon combat right. That has to be a whole new alien concept. Yeah, the last time a dragon fought a dragon in Westeros, from the perspectives of these characters, was about 80 years before. So definitely no one would have seen it. No one alive would have been old enough to remember it. Certainly no one involved. Maybe there's some 90-year-old around who was 10 years old when it happened. But actually, it's even more than 80 years, so probably not. Because this would have been Maegor riding Balerion, killing Aegon the Uncrowned, older brother of Jaehaerys and Alysanne, riding the dragon Quicksilver. And Quicksilver was slain in that exchange, unsurprisingly, against Balerion, it was very much Vagar versus Arax, that matchup in terms of size. Like, Balerion just massively larger than Quicksilver, except that in this case, like, Aegon, like, went for it. He's like, I'm going for him. Like, Arax is just trying to, Luke wanted to get away. This Aegon was like, yeah, go for it. Maybe. If they ever tell this story, maybe it'll be presented differently. Like, Aegon's like, no, are you kidding me? Get away. And he just can't do it. So there's potential there. Who knows how that story will be told. But so that would have been too far long ago to have been in living memory, and it's cited as the first time, that example is cited as the first time two dragons fought each other since Valyria, which tells us that there were no dragon-on-dragon combat in the pre-conquest era of the Targaryens on Dragonstone. They never had some sort of internal civil war before they formed the Iron Throne. Unless they had one that didn't involve dragon versus dragon. Maybe
Off
they
the record.
just daggers in the back and poisonings or something like that. Potentially that happened. But okay, so the question after all this is what is your favorite example of dragon lore that includes dragons not obeying the commands? So Sean, we'll start with you. Do you have a particular item amidst the dragon lore sphere or umbrella that you would like to cite or shout out?
I think just the one that we've had that sparked all this
Cool.
is
Valid.
Aemond not wanting Vagar to kill Luke.
Zach, what would you say?
I think that Caraxes and Daemon's symbiotic relationship does so much for the show, and I think it can plant the idea of what the depths of dragon lore might be, much like what the depths of warging might be, or what the depths of your relationship with your direwolf might be, especially with Nymeria coming back in the OG series, in a way that I said series again. Jesus, sorry, I said series again.
It happens a lot when you're talking about
OG
The Witcher
show.
too, because there's a
Forgot.
character named Ciri, and it's like, well, Ciri's sword and Ciri's clothing, and
anyway, yeah, I think their connection does a lot for like every level of viewer for the show. Even people who like work on it, all the way down to people who can barely talk. They see that and they're like, "Oh, there's so much more to this world."
Nice. Hannah, what about you?
But they shouldn't watch the show if they're that young.
I'll add just the different personalities that the dragons have to
Nice.
the conversation. Just how colorful and vibrant and full of personality that they are. We didn't get to see that a lot in Game of Thrones, and so I felt like House of the Dragon really delivered on letting us get to know these creatures that become bonded with their people. So I liked that a lot.
Good example, yeah. Asher, what about you?
I really liked it when Daemon was singing his little Valyrian. Sorry, excuse me. I liked it when Daemon was singing his Valyrian lullaby to Vermithor.
That was great.
Both I liked the idea that he was smart enough too to be like, hey, no one's been around this dragon for 20 plus years. Maybe I want to like acclimate this dragon to humans before I have someone try to tame it. Like, I think that was sensible of him.
I almost want to say the Dragon Keepers, because that was a really big surprise how much like lore and nuance they added in. The fact that they don't speak common, that they all seem to be like monastic was a great touch. But I'm actually going to call that my second choice and say first was the birth of Visenya with this interspersing of Cyrax in that, which was a really cool way to show the dragon bond and the connection, the emotions that pass back and forth one way to the other in a really intense moment, with a good cinematic effect added to it. So, yes, well done show. Lots of good dragon lore. We look forward to a lot more of it next season. There should be even more dragons, which gives us maybe more opportunity for some new possibilities.
I guess I want to throw one more in the same vein of examples that we're giving, how Balerion killed that little girl in Game of Thrones,
Drogon.
right?
Drogon?
Like that's
Drogon.
Sorry, Drogon. Yeah, Dany did not want him to do
Very
that.
good
She
point.
does not have enough control over him to stop it. She's worried about it happening again, etc.
Very good point. You're right. Yeah.
You know what? I'd say I have a biggest dragon disappointment, though.
Okay.
I really wanted to see Helena ride Dreamfire, and I really feel like we might not have a chance for that going forward, just because, like, I don't know when she's gonna. Like, maybe they'll show us just like, oh, here's what Helena gets up to, but like,
It was just very from the distance. We saw her dragon like in the distance, but you
Yeah.
couldn't really see her on it. It was just like from far
yeah.
away.
Anyway, so it wasn't even clear to me whether Helena rode her dragon home or whether that was just like the dragon rode with them and she was on the ship. To be honest, I guess I didn't really consider that idea
I
about
guess it's
whether
possible, but
I don't know why I just anyways so that is I would like to see more
We
of
do a
Helena.
lot for her character.
Yeah.
If she flew her dragon, like a lot.
Yeah, I know. I would like to see like, oh, Helena's always out on her dragon, or just like how she loves her bugs
Yeah.
and her
Or
critters.
even
Like
one
I
time.
would like to see
She
that.
flies through the sky.
Yeah. So
Okay, just a few more questions, and then we'll call it a stream, my friends. Got a few good questions left. Let's hit them with everything we've got. Misunderstandings and miscommunications is a big recurring part of Season 1. For example, Viserys' dream, the miscommunication or vagueness around what Daemon actually said with the heir for a day, Kristen Cole's confession, which goes very much it's like she's trying to like feel him out about Rhaenyra and Daemon, and it's like, I did it. I'm like, wait, well, you did it. Joffrey and Kristen, to related situation, and then engineering the misunderstanding with Laenor, tricking everybody, or say Alicent and Larys, and careful what you ask for, right? Like, you want your father back, eh? Okay, I'll kill my dad and brother for you. Mm-hmm. Or as Sean, you suggested as a one that deserves a shout out, Rhaenyra going to Kristen, right? Or coming to Kristen, as you say. No pun.
No pun intended.
Right. Let's go. We'll do reverse order this time. I'll go with the Kristen Cole's confession. I just like how smooth that was. It was one of the big like moments we were all really anticipating. People who read Fire and Blood, like, how are they going to do this? Who slept with who? Who turns against who first? And how does it all filter through the court? Like, who knows what? And I thought that was really well handled because it was something they could have mishandled, something that was very tricky. They had a lot of choices, which is part of why I think they could have easily messed it up, given there's so many ways they could have handled it. And that was a really fun, believable way to handle it. Like, she's beating around the bush, and he's all in his own head about it and thinks they're kind of on the same wavelength. It was just very human. It was like a big deal, but the way it was portrayed was like, yeah, I could see the conversation going like that. So I thought it was just really well done, really simple, but really big. Mashaya, what about you? What's your favorite moment of miscommunication or misunderstanding?
That's an interesting one for me. I kind of want more time. I
don't mind going if you want
go,
more
Sean.
time.
Please go, Sean.
Okay. I like the idea that I think it counts that Alicent just wasn't getting that Otto and the whole council were already had this plan. You know, that's not quite the same as a miscommunication, misunderstanding, but I think it's in the same realm that she was like, wait, what do you guys got? You know, I thought that was a good moment. And
it's fair
partly,
to count that,
yeah. One reason that I like it, and also why I believe they did it, is because they're trying to keep Alicent from being so clearly a bad guy, just like I think they're doing with Kristen Cole. They're trying to like keep her on the at least the debatable, the gray area. You know, she's not this clear villain, that she is surprised that they would do something so traitorous. And her reason is more about this other miscommunication from Viserys as he's dying, but that she's genuine. Like, she really believes, even if she's mistaken or biased or clouded or whatever, but she does genuinely believe that's what Viserys wanted, and that's what's motivating her. And she doesn't want war. She doesn't want to hurt Rhaenyra. She's not worried about the realm accepting a woman. It's just what her husband wanted, you know? So
yeah,
right on.
Okay, I guess I'll say mine. I guess I'll say the heir for a day. As honestly, I don't really like the miscommunications or misunderstandings as a conceit very much. Like, I get why it's tragic. I get why they do. Like, I get it. But it's really frustrating to me as a viewer to be like, if you just said something a little bit, like, it makes me want to, like, strangle the TV. Like, it makes me really frustrated. Like, every one of these, I think about it, I'm like, I don't like that. Like, I don't like that was the case, really. I kind of think it's a cop-out in some cases, though I do feel like sometimes it adds a certain level of tragedy. That's frustrating. So I'm going to say heir for a day because it doesn't do that. It instead is playing very much with not showing us what happened on screen and allowing us to fill in the blanks of how we think Daemon said it. So rather than it like being the cause of like a big misunderstanding, it was kind of just like, I don't know. It didn't have as many ramifications. It did have big ramifications. Like, it got Daemon named not to be named as not heir. So like, I don't know why it's different for me, but it feels like a different sort of miscommunication. I guess because I kind of think Daemon was being shitty there.
Well, maybe because partly it was spun a little by Otto, maybe.
Yeah, like it was spun a little, but like the root was still there. It wasn't complete spin. It wasn't a complete miscommunication. Like Daemon did say that, but he was also consoling himself.
That makes it more of a misunderstanding, I guess, because they're assuming what was in Daemon's heart or mind when he was saying that, but really.
And same thing with Otto in this scenario. It's not like he knew the truth of it and manipulated it. He said, he's like, all accounts report this as a celebration. Yeah. And the bit that we saw of it did look like a celebration, except we did see Daemon kind of sulking. And then Mysaria kind of pulled him out of it and he made his little speech. But anyone watching that whole scenario would have seemed like Daemon was celebrating. And Daemon's got to account for this. Viserys did say at one point, like,
you should have been seen.
The perception is as important as the reality, you know, and it's something that, sometimes these miscommunications and misunderstandings, I agree with you, Shay, like, can be kind of cop-outs to make a storyline go in a certain way, which makes me appreciate the ones that don't actually have that many particular ramifications, which I think a lot of them actually are that way. This is a little bit of a tangent of a thought I've had, but I've been trying to think of the different sort of coincidences, these like moments of like, oh, if only. But I had this thought a lot in the original Game of Thrones series, and almost all of them, some other similar thing is going to end up happening anyway. There's too many pieces with momentum that sometimes these little moments, these little flares of an error or a temper or whatever that seem like they trigger stuff, it's really, that was just the one that did it, but one of them was going to do it. It was inevitable that a thing like that was going to happen.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's kind of similar with Daemon. If this heir for a day didn't happen, some other thing was going to happen. Otto was already, by the way, once again, minor tangent, but I do want to point out Otto, the green, that blacks don't like, that probably a lot of people wouldn't, anyone who supports the blacks doesn't like Otto, wouldn't want to do what he says. Otto is the one that convinced Viserys to name Rhaenyra as the heir. Otto is the one that didn't want Kristen Cole on the King's Guard.
All right, let's get back to this question.
Can I say we got someone in the chat, Elle, who said they named when Otto thought Viserys wanted to have supper in the morning. I laughed.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one. All right, Hannah, what's your pick here? What's your pick?
I want to say that just the misunderstanding that really built the foundation of Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship that essentially spurred so much of this conflict. I felt like it was so true to teenage girldom to have the two of them basically talking past each other so often, and to Ashaya's point, how frustrating that was to watch. I felt like it was really believable, especially when they were so young, not just being able to connect despite them having conversations with each other. I thought that was really believable, and that's a broad answer.
No, that's good. Zach, what about you?
I thought that people didn't really understand how much Jason Lannister really cared about Rhaenyra.
He was willing to build her a dragon pit.
He was going to build a dragon pit. You
That
guys
was
ever seen how big that is?
serious
That's love.
expense. I mean, that is no
think about
small
the scale
thing.
of what that would take up within Lana's port. I mean, we're talking businesses, coffee shops, hotels,
Now that's
new
a
parking garage.
Now that's a job creator right there.
That's what I'm saying. He was putting the realm first.
Rainier should
I
have.
like what
signed
all
up
you
for
guys are
that.
saying. Anything with the Jaime Lannister energy of knowing that he took down the Mad King for a good reason, and then everyone else, including someone that should have been the first person to sing his praises, but that he fucked up in saying that, or in doing that, not correcting him. That not correcting people thing, because it's like, oh, if you don't know, you're not worth it. That is rampant in Hot D.
Yeah.
And it's less bad coming from Viserys because most of the people are his children, even his wife. They're like the age of his children, and he's like helping them, reach conclusions, and so he's not being too heavy-handed. But Daemon is just like Viserys in that regard, where the heir for a day thing is a direct example of it. But it seems like Rhaenyra understands him the most, and was always able to see through that and see who that person is. And so that is probably why they have such a good friendship. So just food for thought for everyone, that there's probably like some unspoken stuff. If you just paid a little bit extra attention, maybe you'd find an answer.
Yeah, right on. Well said. Well point. Good said, y'all. Okay, let's look at our last question. Another major theme of the season, recurring pattern, recurring character trait, denial. A failure to see X for what or who they really are. The dragons are a great example. Viserys is like, we are not seeing the dragons for what they really are. We don't have the control over them we expect we do. Denial can, of course, feed misunderstandings and miscommunications. So these themes very much overlap. So in many ways, it is an arch theme of the season. Daemon himself is a meta example of this. Not only does Viserys and others deny who he is in certain ways, like deny the kind of person he really is, but the fandom does that. Like, I feel he's a great example of things like Sean, you pointed out. I was like, why is Daemon not get more criticism? Like, he's entertaining. No doubt he's a great character. I think that's perhaps the biggest bottom line here. But it proves why, regardless of what the reason is outworld, like from us fans, why people give Daemon more leeway for bad deeds than perhaps other characters. It proves why it works in world too. Like, if we're giving him credit, if we're giving him leeway, then it makes sense that he would get it from his family and from other people. I mean, he's a prince, so we all know that the more powerful your family, the more you can get away with stuff. That just kind of tracks wherever you are.
And the more likely you are to be sort of idolized and given benefit of the doubt in the first place.
That's
right?
true.
Like, think about the British royal family or John F. Kennedy or someone. People we know basically do a lot of crappy stuff, but there's still sort of these heroes, icons, fashion leaders, or whatever else that people are interested and want to know about. And, get celebrity worship or whatever you want to say. Daemon, the average people, the average commoner, probably don't even necessarily know all the crappy stuff that he's done.
Yeah.
But he's handsome and he's rich and he's famous.
Great fighter, which I love that. Yeah.
And he's going to fight and all this other stuff.
Very
and
good point, yeah.
But maybe when we watch a show and he does something like, he like goes for the feet of the horse in a joust, and we're like, what? That's unfair. That's crappy. But everyone doesn't know he did that. And maybe even some people are like, yeah, whatever it takes
nice
to
move.
win, or,
Yeah, totally true. Yeah, it's really good. And this one also has is perhaps the most real world applicability. 'Cause like you said, Sean, like you named some real world examples. Like a good example is like people having denial about like a favorite political leader or a sports figure or a musician that they really like what kind of person they really are, an actor, like maybe they're great at acting, but they've, abused people in the real world. So it's hard to separate these things sometimes. So, but that happens a lot in this show. So like just some examples, Viserys and the Succession, Rhaenyra and the Succession, how people will just let her have it without fighting over it, or Rhaenyra and how much people are really seeing her children. She thought it was kind of a secret or like a well-handled secret. Actually, like everybody knows who your kids are. Or Alicent and actually offering, like, yeah, they'll accept our offer to just have peace, and you get Dragonstone, and they'll accept that. Yeah. There's lots of examples of Otto's hypocrisy and like Otto just, oh yeah, he'll be a Maegor, and then turn around and like, what do you think Aegon is going to be? Well, they're very much in denial of what kind of man Aegon is, I think. Daemon just projecting that they killed his brother. Like, yeah, they murdered Viserys. They murdered him. Yeah, it was poison. Like, no, it wasn't. Daemon and prophecy just denies that they have any value at all. It's mostly because it hurt his feelings that he wasn't included, perhaps, or Alicent did not being exasperated and confused as to how Rhaenyra's children could even have dragons. Like, wow, I can't believe they're even dragon riders, things like that. So there's a lot of examples of this. I'm sure the full list would be way longer. Those are just some that came to my mind when thinking of this, which I think is one of the best, most relevant themes of the season. So, Sean, what do you think? What's your favorite example of denial or something you just want to highlight, the way this theme was used? Don't have to pick a specific one if you want, but feel free. What do you have to say about it?
I'm going to say I think it's the fault of several characters have this sort of denial. I've mentioned it a few times through the season that they're kind of in this ivory tower, and they even when they are sort of aware a decision they're making might not go over, they still aren't proactive about making sure it does go over. Like, Viserys knows that this is kind of precedent setting. There's a reason he didn't just name his daughter and tell his wife stop worrying about having kids in the first place, right? He knew quote unquote, needed a son. So when he eventually breaks and decides to name his daughter, and he's like, okay, there you go. Now pour me some wine, daughter. Like, he didn't like send letters out to the lords. He didn't visit the castles every year. He didn't send her out to visit the castles. He didn't listen to her advice on a council or really make her part of it. There's all sorts of proactive things he and Otto and Alicent and Rhaenyra herself all could have done to make this go over. But some combination of assuming it would and or assuming it won't, and not doing anything proactively one way or the other, I guess due to their denial or laziness or arrogance or naivete or whatever it is. I mean, I almost think that's like the defining element of the show and these characters is that particular sort of denial that I made the decision and it will stick. That basically that Viserys is making, and Otto is almost the opposite. He made this decision and it won't stick. And Otto at least was taking some proactive action in that regard. But ostensibly, if he was really loyal to Viserys, he should have been taking proactive action in the other direction.
Yes, he should have.
He just assumed it could not work no matter what, and so he didn't try. And I think that's a sort of a denial, and etc.
Fair point. Yeah. By the way, though, real quick. It would be quite a twist if the High Tower was actually made out of ivory. If that ivory tower was... yeah. Hey-o. Zach, what would you say?
We don't know that.
We don't... Well, I guess we can't say for sure that it's not made of ivory. I don't...
It's ivory.
Yeah, maybe there's some ivory in it.
It's canon. It's ivory.
That's why
now.
it's so lovely.
Yeah. Come on, dude. It's either no, it's ivory. I was going to say... Never mind. It's ivory.
What's your pick here?
Man, this is tough.
It is. I say perhaps the hardest question for last. The widest open, yet the most present.
Man, I would just say probably is this too open-ended to say everyone's denial and how close they are to each other and how obvious, how easy everything would to be fixed? Like, they're adding all these different riffs and there's these like ultimatums where it's like, well, if this happens, then I'll not talk to them for 6 years. These weird little things where it's like, if you guys weren't in a family with each other, then fine, go ahead and do that. But you're literally all kin to each other. I mean, your dad is married to your best friend.
So maybe you're saying they're denying
all kids or everyone.
They're denying their inherent
just the reality
closeness.
of this whole situation.
Yeah.
The truth of what it actually is, and it comes head to head whenever they go to the funeral. And I remember that's in Fire and Blood, and obviously it's the same story, but that's one of those things that sort of pull people in, like a lot of tragedies do, where it's like against your own will. But at something like The Hunt in this season, it was too early for them to have a lot of issues.
Yeah,
So
that's true. They were
life
still
sort of
young.
provides the opportunities to fix your own dumb mistakes. Is basically what this show has been.
That's a great point, Zach, because you're right. Like, to say that neither side is throughout all their building of quibbling and fighting and building up to that, it's leading to civil war, and none of them seem to realize that's where it's headed.
Yeah,
That's a really good
Right.
point, because it's like one of the most important things, or maybe the most important.
Did you
thing.
see how fast? Do you guys remember how fast to the dinner Alicent and Rhaenyra were able to just tie it off?
Yeah.
They were like, "Wait a second, we can choose to be nice to each other for the sake of Viserys, who we both love, who's clearly dying, his eyes falling out of his head. And our kids are here. Let's set an example. We've all seen our parents do this. Let's set an example for 15 minutes." And that's how easy it is. And that's the big lie, that we could just be like that quick.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. Hannah, what do you think?
I have two really quick ones. The first is Luke going to Storm's End with literally nothing but himself and no protection, nobody,
Sean's
no
head
gifts.
is like,
Yeah.
No gifts, no money.
Oh, we need to remind him of his promise.
So
That's
back-
all.
Just his winning smile.
Yeah. That was a wild thing.
That's bad writing.
Right. And then I want to also just say, from a broader point, I think Rhaenyra and just her kids in general, and Rhaenyra's like early actions in her younger days, as she completely like denies what her position is and what her position means, and she acts as if none of that matters. No, her precariousness of her position or her responsibility, she just pretends like it doesn't apply to her.
Yeah.
As Kristen Cole more
You guys are
bluntly-
all so smart.
That's a really good question. That's a really
more
good
bluntly
answer.
put.
Yeah, really good answer.
So that frustrated me to no end this season. So
It's a
Yeah.
less obvious one, because I just watch her and I'm like, what are you gonna do next? That's great. And you're like, you're not being consistent, young lady.
No, I completely agree with you, Hannah, on both of those points. Those might have been either one of those might have been my answers. And especially because the Luke plays into the Rhaenyra's denial over the succession thing.
Yeah.
Where it is like she has just sort of just gaslit herself and is trying to do it to her sons, and like she's really committed, but like there is that moment where she like is talking to Luke and she's like, "Oh, Lord Boros will be happy to welcome you. You've got Baratheon blood through your grandmother." Right? I was like, "No, you don't." Like
you really don't, and
And
he
that
knows that.
Yeah, and that really bothered me because like I get that she's like, I can't speak the truth anywhere. Anyone can be listening, whatever. But like that is really messed up. To gaslight your children into trying to believe something, like that is psychologically so messed up to do.
Yes,
Like I
you're right.
get why she's doing it, absolutely. But like, come on, be real with your kids for one time. Be real with them.
One time.
Right.
Okay, I'm listening. I will tell Strike other things. I get it.
don't lie to Strike.
They're getting it so
Don't lie to
personally
your
right
dog.
now. It's just like, okay.
I'll say Otto and his projecting of what kind of ruler certain people would be. Sean, you sort of touched on this, how he's just like, he's very convenient with who he thinks should be the heir. And it's very like, based on who he thinks should be the heir, the laws are very malleable based on like what the situation is. It always seems to be his pick. Like first he's like, oh, Daemon would be as bad as Maegor. And then it's like, well, Otto, like Aegon looks like he might be as bad as Maegor, or some different kind of Maegor, maybe like less violent but more abusive towards women, which could be just as bad. He could have bastards, which could be worse for the succession.
Although I feel like there's a certain element where Otto and Allison or whatever some people who are worried about Maegor are because of his anti-faith stance.
Ah, yes, that
I would
too.
say that's a maybe a difference.
Fair point,
key
fair point.
difference that they would see. The Hightowers
I've wanted to say this
specifically.
I've wanted to say this a couple times. I'm not so sure that Otto or even Allison are really in denial about what kind of king Aegon might be. I think it's at least possible that they know, but I think they're in denial about something else, which is their ability to control him.
That's
I
fair.
think
That's fair. Yeah, you might be right.
There'll
about
be
that.
this bad seed or whatever, but we'll make sure that XYZ gets done. And I think that's where they're in denial about. What if he stands up to you in court?
Yeah.
What if he says, no, do this? Or even if he goes behind your back, if you make some public decree and he's not bold enough to challenge you there, But what if after that he goes and tells, all right, go kill that person? Are they not going to follow the king when they get that? You know, that I think they're in denial about their ability to control.
That's
him. I think they
you're
know
right.
he'll be bad, but I think they can control him, and that's what I think they're going to be wrong about, and what they're actually in denial about.
That's a great point. Yeah, you're right, because they there's plenty of evidence that they know what kind of person he is, or like they think they have him pegged, like as a wastrel.
Yeah.
Like because Allison called him an imbecile.
Yeah,
She's
she
just
said,
like
"No
slapped
son
him.
of mine." Yeah.
Yeah, she said no son of mine. Otto kicked him when he was drunk on the stairs that one time.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you're right. They're not entirely fooled, but I think you
Remember
narrowed it down better there that way. Yeah.
The Eric Otto conversation too, and it's like, look, man, he tells me to stay here and then leaves me. I can't
What am I
subvert his
supposed to
authority.
do?
And Otto's like, okay, yeah,
It's
I
like,
get it.
yeah. What are you supposed to do? I get. You're right. Like, I don't know what I would do either. So yeah, there's a lot of good examples of that. That's very well said. This might have been my favorite set of answers of the whole one. I was hoping this would be a good one to talk about last, and I was not disappointed. Well done, y'all. So I think that about does it. I think we have done a lot of great coverage today. I think this was fun to review a lot of our favorite moments of the season. It's not just about what was favorite, because it touched on a lot of things that we wanted to talk about, things maybe we didn't say earlier in the season, and we got to tie a lot of things together, connecting things from episode 1 all the way to 10 rather than looking them at one episode at a time. So that is very cool.
Yeah, it was very fitting to have Game of Owns on for the episode where we're just sharing all of our owns. Right?
Yeah, these were kind of like
the season,
owns.
baby.
Yep.
Send in your owns now.
You guys got a lot of owns this season, huh? It was probably fun to have this great quantity return to the fandom.
Yeah, every week I was like, oh, there's the Game of Owns tweet with all these replies, and
I
everyone
know.
was like, oh, nice.
We took over everyone's Twitter thread for a little while. Sorry.
It
Can you
was
believe
great.
it's been how many years since it's happened? Since we've done it again.
I know.
2019. Can you guys believe that we're on another set of years?
Yeah.
We survived a pandemic in the middle of
That's
this.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
It happened. We got there, y'all.
Shay, you were at my house when the pandemic happened. That's
Yeah,
how long
I
we've been
know.
doing this.
Wow, that's right.
That was like at the end of everything,
Like
years ago.
empty Times Square. You got to see.
Yeah.
It was probably one of
Yeah,
the
I was there.
strangest
It was
things.
whatever March 13th or whatever it was, 2020. I was visiting
Right.
Zach and
Literally
Hannah,
right
and
when
was-
it happened.
Yeah, it was weird. Very strange. We recorded a podcast episode. We were like joking about the pandemic stuff and quarantine
We
stuff.
were.
We
And
were.
Little
We were.
did we know they're like cut to 2 years plus later, and we'd still be dealing with it.
Yeah.
We thought it was. We did not know. We had no idea.
Joke's on us.
Yeah, the joke was on us.
We were trying to choose between COVID is coming or a dream of quarantine. We're like, which one's better?
It's not so funny now, is it?
No,
Yeah, it
wasn't.
kind of still.
It
is.
absolutely wasn't.
No, especially right after it happened. Like right after it started, we're like, oh shit.
No. Well, yes. Thank you very much, Game of Owns. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Zach, and thank you, Strike, wherever you are back there. He's somewhere back
Thank
there.
you,
Sean. And thank you,
He's
Sean.
back in New York. He's still at my house.
Oh, he
Oh,
stayed in New
yeah,
York. Okay.
duh.
Well, thank you anyway,
Yep.
Strike. He'll listen later. He's got his headphones. Yeah, he's got those.
yeah, he's
dog
using my old
phones.
AirPods. I got the new ones.
Are you going to be in DC tomorrow still, Zach? Or are you just there today?
Just in the morning. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm going
Writing
to
a
be in
book?
DC
What are you
tomorrow.
doing?
That's where I'll be.
Oh yeah.
Just randomly.
Holy crap.
Hit us
That's where
up.
I'm flying in. I'll be there at noon tomorrow. If you stick around, we could meet up and get lunch.
Whoa.
I don't know. Anyways, we'll talk
How are you getting to New
afterwards.
York?
How cool.
Okay, cool.
And little conversations like this remind us of how great this community is and how the show unites us and helps bring us back together. I mean, it's not like we don't hang out off season, but it certainly gives us more to do.
Zach
in
has spent
season.
weeks in our house.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without sunlight.
You got to keep that basement sunless. That's the way to be. Yes, it's like the black cells, but the comfortable version.
Yeah, we keep Zach in the black cells. Yeah.
the Zach
Dude,
cells.
you know,
Zach
for
cells,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, they renamed them. Hey, dude, guys, this podcast, you guys had such good questions, and I know that we just had a season wrap up conversation, but this was really fun just to be a part of.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for both of us, but for my sanity, post season to talk about it with you. I mean, we've been talking about the shows with literally you three and us two for years now, and I'm so glad that it was us, and I'm so glad Sean you were here too.
Yeah, this was the
Yeah.
first time I got
I'm
to
happy
talk
for it
to you
out
about
there,
the
yeah.
season, Zach. I haven't talked to
I
you
know,
at all.
I know.
You've been busy for 10 weeks. So I haven't spoken to you
It's
at all.
really been super busy, so I'm glad it worked out this way. I know we were gonna come on like at the start of the season, but
Yeah.
this is fitting too.
Yeah, so
because
it's
we
good.
used to wrap up the seasons like around the same time, or at least 2 weeks after they ended. So this is about right.
So yeah, folks, check out Game of Owns if you haven't already. I know we've had them on before. I've lost track of how many times y'all been on and how many times we've been on your show. Plenty is the answer, and more
Sean
to
been on
come
Game of
is the
Owns?
other answer.
Has Sean been on?
I have.
You have? Okay, I just double checking.
Yeah.
I just
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
cool.
All the connections have been made in different directions. Yes. And more will be coming. Of course, we have our spoiler review next Monday. We'll be adjusting our schedule for the off season. Keep an eye on that. Our social media will be describing that. We'll probably put up some things for vote on Patreon as far as what the schedule will be going forward. Feel free to drop us a review if you've enjoyed us all season. Let us know what you thought. Let other people know that way. It helps spread the word a bit. If you feel like signing up to be a subscriber, you can do that on Patreon. You can do that through Spotify. You can go to our website. There's a lot of different ways to contribute that way. You can also find direct links to a lot of our other episodes, our back catalog, scripted or otherwise. And of course, we'll keep the content coming, both House of the Dragon related and book oriented. Plenty more to come. This is just the end of a phase, not anything like an ending. You know how it goes, folks. This is forever. This is a forever fandom, and the future is bright. Yeah, we are lucky, lucky, lucky. Mm-hmm. And Sean has on glowing horns.
And a great shirt.
And a great shirt with a pumpkin head and a...
Dwight. It's pumpkin.
Oh, it's Dwight.
It's
It's
for
Pumpkin
Halloween
Dwight.
because it's Halloween. He's the only one that really truly dressed. I wish I'd gotten you all to dress in a costume.
I forgot if I was
I
muted.
know.
I've been in a costume all day.
Yeah, we took our costumes off for this. Messed up of us.
Sad. I know. I wanted Aziz to dress up, but I didn't push him. I was like, wear a cloak or something.
I could have worn my Night's Watch cloak, yeah. But I'm wearing an Aegon's crown. I guess it would have been like Jon
Yeah, it's a
Snow.
good shirt.
It would have been Jon Snowish, like an Aegon's crown shirt with a Night's Watch cloak. That sounds like a Jon Snow thing to do.
Yeah, everyone at the gas station is going to know that one, dude.
Right on. So again, folks, if you came live to watch, we really appreciate that. If you're participating in the chat, I hope you had fun. I hope you join us in the future for more chats. If you haven't joined for a live stream, why not check it out sometime? It's a lot of fun. You can meet a lot of people who are like-minded and have a little fun chatting with those folks while you listen to us go on and off about our various takes here and there. Thank you to Michael Klarfeld for the maps and the regular video intro. Thank you to Bran the Builder, Bran Winslow, for our House of the Dragon video intro and music. He did them both. Like the real House of the Dragon intro for the show, he's going to be modifying his, so next season you'll see a changed version of it.
I'm
That'll be
pretty
cool.
excited because Brandon is going to be here in about 15 days, 2 weeks. He's going to be staying with us
Yeah.
for part of the year. He normally lives in Puerto Rico, but he kind of wants to. He's from Georgia, so he kind of wants to live in the Atlanta area. And we really hit it off when we met him at Ice and Fire Con, and I've been enjoying working with him creatively, and I'm excited about this intro thing. So I'm pretty pumped. So yes,
Yeah.
we will have Brandon as a roommate, replacing Sean, who used to live with us. Now he'll be in a different room.
The history of Westeros Castle has had some interesting stints of different people staying here. It's not really a castle either, but I can call it that
Pretty big.
because I
Kind of. To
choose
me, it is.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's
think
a castle.
big.
It is pretty
like,
big.
Biggest
Yeah,
house
we
I've
live in
ever lived
apartments.
in, yeah.
We don't have any
That's 3
battlements
stories.
or siege towers or
Listen, man,
dungeons.
you're-
You have
Well,
a steep
we kinda have a
driveway.
dungeon.
Yeah.
Steep driveway. Dude, your
We
your
could have a
house is
moat.
made for battlements.
Yeah.
Literally.
You have to go downhill to attack the house instead of up. Usually you want to make it okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's tough to get to. They can't take their wagons down it easily. You got a choke point built in.
Plus we have cats.
Fodder to arrows down there.
We have cat
so-
defenders too. You know?
Spikes.
Oh yeah.
Spikes. Come on. Oil slick spikes. We'll talk about it later. I have a good idea.
Okay, folks, that's it for today. We will see you next week with Learned Hands for the spoiler-filled wrap and look ahead. There'll be a lot of looking ahead. There'll be at least as much, if not more, looking ahead than there was looking back. Because we did a lot of looking back today. There
Yeah.
isn't as much spoiler looking back to do.
There's
But we
so
have a
many
few things.
spoilery topics I'm dying to talk
There
about.
are a lot, yes, and we've been collecting more just this week, like things that we didn't notice, people noticing things, and yeah, we're excited for that. We're very excited to tie in some book stuff, and you'll see, folks, next Monday. Until then, you know what to do. Valar, rewatch us, and Valar, reread us.
Lionel Strong for life.
Ah!